two one way, but instead two the other way. Deontay Banks came in and blocked the extra point.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Here comes JT Daniels. He's going to take a shot at the end zone. And what do you know? Bryce Ford Wheaton puts West Virginia an extra point away.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Indiana just a field goal to their credit so far. Penix, take it down. Luke Van Ness, the redshirt freshman.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
What was that play? Schrader faked the handoff, and Brian Brazee dumped it for a loss.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Richardson on 2nd and 9. His first pass attempt of the game, downfield, going for it all to the end zone. And into the hands of Justin Shorter for a Gators touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, it's another week, and it's the first full week in March, and March Madness, of course, upon us. NFL Combine basically wrapping up, and so much to get to. The conference tournaments for a lot of the schools this week, and a lot of them have already wrapped up as some of the automatic bursts for those one-school-type conferences to make the NCAA tournament. Some of them have been decided. A lot to get to, including over the weekend. Mark Adams at Texas Tech has been suspended. That's a story to watch. And, of course, this is one that because of something he said to a player. Now, there's conflicting reports of what was said. Does it matter? Texas Tech, well, it does matter. But Texas Tech, Kirby Hocutt, has suspended him. And the question is, what's next? Now, there's one rumor that's connected way back to Baylor. Grant McCaslin, who's had a great run at North Texas. Brett Vito covers North Texas. With this one after that, there will be an interesting to watch. North Texas fans, Grant McCaslin, spent time on Texas Tech staff in his career, also spent time at Baylor, and could be a name you see with Mark Adams if, in fact, he does not survive, not just the weekend, but also with the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, whether he coaches in Lubbock again.
Well, I'll tell you this about Texas Tech. The other person they need to look at is Kirby Hocutt, because this is the fourth or fifth coach that he has had that has gotten in trouble for a relationship issue with players, where Billy Gillespie, got fired for working the players out so hard that they were vomiting in trash cans. They had a softball coach fired because of abusive relationships towards players. The women's basketball coach fired because of abusive relationships toward players. Seems to have just dodged the bullet by 2 years on Chris Beard. Maybe.
Did he hire the softball coach and the women's basketball
He's been
coach?
there since.
It's been a while.
He left Miami just before the Nevin Shapiro thing hit, and I saw that on Goodman's Twitter feed today, as a matter of fact. So Kirby Hocutt's going to have to answer for four or five coaches under his watch, all being fired for similar things. And now with Mark Adams in this, Bible verse he allegedly quoted to a player, which, we don't know what happened, but I mean, it just wasn't a smart thing all the way around for him to do. So, I think Kirby Hocutt's going to have to answer for some of that.
Well, Craig, he, of course, was the darling a year ago with Chris Beard at Texas, and Texas Tech fans rallied around him. He was thought to be the main reason why they had success, was not to take away, or someone were trying to take away from what Chris Beard accomplished as well. And it's here we are again. And I based on, and Chris Lovell joins us at 3:30 today, based on talking to some people who covered Texas Tech, they're not sure he comes back.
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't seem like he's going to be coming back. I mean, that seems to be the most obvious answer to this. I mean, what are they going to fight to save him for at this point? I mean, they had the season there at the end where, you know, started to feel like maybe they're turning a corner, but for the most part, it was awfully forgettable. And, yeah, this is the same guy who, like, a year ago, like, Chris Beard who? Chris Beard who? He deserves credit for what? And, you know, happy to see him, you know, in the saddle and running the Red Raider program and feeling like maybe they actually caught a break, you know, that Chris Beard wasn't the magic guy. And then the hope was that maybe it was actually Mark Adams. But, I mean, yeah, what a year for both of those gentlemen. And, you know, for Adams, it's just been, you know, off all year long. There's just been one thing after another, it seems like, whether the rumor mills about, you know, the situation familially or family-wise with his brother's ex-wife and that whole thing. And then there's always seemed like there's a lot of like going on behind the scenes with Mark Adams and Texas Tech. It always just felt like there's just something kind of off there. And, you know, then obviously they struggled during the season, and that adds that extra pressure. And then now you have more situations that become public, and, yeah, racially insensitive comments, perhaps spitting on a player. I mean, who else knows what is out there and that maybe hasn't even been touched upon just yet. But, yeah, just a bad deal all the way around. I don't think he's coaching in Lubbock again. I think this is actually, in a roundabout way, a good thing. It gives them a reason to move on and go hire somebody else in the case that maybe you didn't think he was going to be the guy for the long term. Maybe this year kind of shed light on, you know, maybe this isn't going to be our next Chris Beard or to that same level of success. It kind of gives you an out, doesn't it, to go ahead and move?
And that's also one of the stories that even in various places that they were looking for this,
right,
and that this also could be pressure from some of the big money donors that they found a couple of things and they were looking for a couple of things. Yes.
That's how it feels to me, actually, because I don't feel like all of a sudden just like rumors about him popped up that were negative. I feel like there's been, again, stuff swirling about him for quite some time, not to the level of, you know, the types of comments apparently he made or spitting on a player or whatever else. But I don't know. This just feels like it's very coincidental and fine timing if you're a Red Raider fan, actually. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit embarrassing for a few days, and, you know, inevitably they're going to have to make a final decision. But I don't know. That's kind of the gist that I get is, yeah, he's probably on his way out, and yeah, they're probably fine with that. So that's where I stand on it.
They did hire he did hire Tadlock, who's a hell of a baseball coach at Texas Tech, and I think so. There's one, and even Kim Coulter put that up on the chat room. Kim says that he's pretty much put a lot into Texas Tech and wants to stay out of it for today, but giving us a couple of other pieces. We don't know what was said. We don't know if it was an individual meeting. We don't know if the player was immediately offended by it or later on thought it maybe changed his mind. There's still things we don't know exactly what was said, if quoting a Bible verse, whatever. And so I'm even tell you this. There's even been some, they're looking for a reason to get rid of Mark Adams other than just the record itself, and maybe there's been other things off the court, and that maybe someone convinced the player he should be offended.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at least a scenario to discuss as well.
Now, like, I thought about the Bible verse thing from both angles of it, of do I think that Mark Adams wants to treat his players as slaves? No. I don't think that that's what he meant if he quoted that Bible verse. But if he did and didn't do it with any kind of like qualifier of the Bible was written a really long time ago by people who thought you could maybe make gold out of other things that weren't gold. Like, there are things that have changed over the years. And look, as a person who grew up, you know, with faith in a Catholic family, look, I'm washed in the blood of the Lamb. Before anybody like jumps on me about what I'm about to say, not every single sentence in the Bible is something that you should repeat or something that you should learn a lesson from, because it was written in a very, very long time ago when things were really, really different, and there wasn't context outside of that information for you to know that when you wrote it down, it was going to be bad. So those things you should know that as Mark Adams and go, well, maybe I'll skip this part of it and move on to what the real message is. So on both sides of that, can be kind of silly, but it does feel like when I read it was they're looking for something.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a very much, you know, a nice, there might be a crack in the door here, and let's see who kicks it open.
We'll see what happens. Grant McCaslin, who, again, was at Tech under Bob Knight, And then, of course, was at Baylor for a time with Scott Drew. How would that be? Just a thought. You're talking about of the 10 or 8 remaining original Big 12 teams with Texas and Oklahoma out of the picture here soon, that you have 3 of the 8, even though the incoming schools, that are former Baylor coaches and or Scott Drew is at Baylor. And that doesn't include what Paul Mills might be doing at Oral Roberts once their season ends.
Yeah, and I know, you brought up Kirby Hocutt. I mean, I saw an article where it's like time to turn up the heat on Kirby Hocutt, or at least, look a little bit deeper. And I don't think that should be off the table. I mean, I do think that if there's a number of incidences with coaches and, your leadership has had a hand in creating that staff, that atmosphere, and time again there seems to be an issue, then I think at worst you just look in the mirror a little bit, right, and say, like, okay, what are we doing here that it's leading to, like, what seemingly is a lot of incidents here over a short amount of time where, coach behavior is not up to snuff. And that's back-to-back basketball coaches, for example. And you mentioned the women's basketball coach, and there's been, perhaps others as well. So I don't think this is anything that leads to him being fired or even really probably gets much juice beyond, like, today, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think that could be affected by how they handle the Adams situation. But I don't know. This doesn't feel as big as Chris Beard by any stretch. And again, to me, it mostly feels like, all right, now we've got more than enough reasons to go ahead and move on like we really want to anyways. And so I don't think that would mean, building, up a bunch of steam to try and just overhaul, let's get rid of the AD and let's get, I don't think that that's in the cards for Texas Tech. I think they've got too much positive momentum in other areas, primarily football, and then obviously baseball as well going on right now. But it's very interesting. I mean, that's a team that was in the Final Four, played for a national championship. They were in the Sweet 16 last year. They said the whole good riddance, Chris Beard, we're better off without you. And here they are a year later, and they might be moving on from the guy who, replaced the guy. And so I'm sure they'll find a great coach if that's the route that they go. But I do think that's the route that they go.
Well, they have to win the Big 12 tournament to get into the tournament. Oklahoma would have to win the Big 12 tournament to get into the tournament. And there's a chance Oklahoma State will have to win the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City to get into the NCAA tournament. A couple of notes, by the way, speaking of bracketology and more, and this is from a combination of a lot of different guys who do the data. One of them, of course, Joe Lunardi from ESPN. Right now, he still has Kansas, despite getting hammered by Texas on Saturday, as the overall number 1 seed. Alabama, Houston, and UCLA also number 1 seeds. Alabama lost at A&M on Saturday. Meanwhile, Baylor, Texas, Purdue, and Arizona, the number 2 seeds. And honestly, I got to tell you, I understand all the stats and the wins and the quad 1 or whatever. Baylor, based on how they played Saturday, I mean, I get it, who they've beaten, etc. They were destroyed, embarrassed at home on senior night by Iowa State. And I'm sure Scott Drew is still trying to get that taste out of his mouth. I know that Baylor fans probably are. It was horrible. It was a disgusting performance, and they had nothing. And Iowa State comes in here with their player Grill not on the team anymore, and maybe, hey, TJ, give him credit, because it apparently sparked Iowa State, who beat Baylor now by double digits both times. Kansas State slipped to a number 3 seed. They were beaten also over the weekend. Iowa State, TCU were 5 seeds. West Virginia, a 10th seed. Very nice win against Kansas State. That's who Lunardi at this particular point. Doesn't mean he's always right on, but he's pretty damn close. Those would be the 7 teams from the Big 12 that would get in the tournament.
That was, for Baylor, one of the more underwhelming senior days you're ever going to see. I don't know what was going on there. And look, I would say that in the first half, I wouldn't say that Iowa State was just playing really well. They were playing about average by their standards, and Baylor played really badly. And then in the second half, Baylor continued to play really badly, and then Iowa State started playing well. And for whatever reason, TJ Otzelberger has got Baylor's number right now.
He does.
Yeah, they are 2-0 against them this year. So, yeah, they have their number, and now they face each other a third time to open the tournament. So, if he does, in fact, have their number, that'll be a quick exit for the Bears, and that'll be back-to-back losses to Iowa State in less than a week's time. And that's certainly possible, if not the, probably favorite outcome to happen because, I mean, what are they going to drastically do differently from – they should make more shots, I guess, is always possible. I mean, that's always possible, but they don't seem like a great matchup, at least through these first two contests where, as you pointed out, I mean, double-digit losses both time, home and away. So now neutral ground in Kansas City, and we'll see if maybe that – changes anything. But, yeah, that's a bad look for both basketball teams. It was a bad look this weekend. I mean, to go out there and be in the situations that you're in where, you're not you winning a championship, which, hey, that can't happen every year. That's fine. But you're both heading to the tournament. You're both feeling good. And now you both have this opportunity to end the regular season on a high note. And not only do you both lose, but you both just lose in bad fashion. I mean, just an ugly fashion. And so – really feel for the fans that turned out to try and have this grand send-off for, basketball season at the Farrell Center. And the last time that they'll be able to, do that in this regular fashion, because next year the finale at the Farrell Center will be in January or in late December. So this was the final real regular season finale, and they both laid absolute eggs. And I don't know what got into both teams this weekend. I mean, outside of just the matchups themselves, I mean, the women, much like the men against Iowa State, haven't fared well against West Virginia. They got swept by the Mountaineers. So I don't know if it's just, just purely a bad matchup thing, but that was also that was a lack of emotion. That was a lack of energy. That was a lack of more than just not the ball not going in the hoop often enough. That was just, I don't know, not a complete no-show, but just a bad showing. And so, hopefully they both get that out of their systems, for their sake, here in the next couple of days, because you look at the sands in the hourglass and time's running out. I mean, this is the end of the season coming up. I mean, this is you're basically entering win or go home time now, and that's not going to be the case for either one this week. But if each one of them or if either one of them has a quick exit, that is going to be a bit alarming going into NCAA tournament play, because neither one's guaranteed a long stay by any means, and so hopefully they can regroup a little bit. But yeah, that was an ugly senior day for sure.
It was horrible. It really, really was. All right, so that's what we have, at least now. When I say what we have for you information on the Big 12. But Kansas being the number one seed, that was a hell of a win for Rodney Terry in Texas, because they would have had a pretty disappointing finish to the regular season. They're now a number 2 seed. Kansas will not be anything other than a 1 seed no matter what happens in Kansas City. Texas, most likely anything other than a number 2 seed. Don't think they can get up to a 1 seed even if they were to win the tournament, because of how strong Alabama, Houston, and UCLA appear to be and that's analytics and much more. Baylor, I don't know. I mean, they were a pretty strong, I think even maybe the number 1 2 seed or the number 2 seed behind Texas, maybe even ahead of them based on even a week ago. And so now you wonder if there's a chance they drop to a number 3 seed. And I don't know. I've seen them go to Kansas City, flame out, and everything's fine. They're still a good seed entering the NCAA.
Yeah, I mean, lucky for it's lucky and unlucky for them that everybody behind them at this point has kind of stayed status quo for the most part. So there's not somebody that you could, even if they did lose again to Iowa State on Thursday, there would almost, to me, have to be 2 teams you'd have to make the argument that could push them down to a 3 and not just 1, because then you might be splitting hairs. But if there's 2 or 3 teams that maybe move into that category, then you have to move them down. But when you look at the rest of the people and quad 1 wins and all these other things, when you stack it up against the conference tournament, I will say this. I've seen teams really good in the Big 12 tournament go in and they really want to win it. I've seen really great teams go in and not care about that. Occasionally, one time, I saw Kansas go in there and kind of half-ass through it, which doesn't happen very often, but because they're at their home court essentially. But it depends every year, team to team, how they feel about going into Kansas City, and it's not really going to help Baylor any. That's the problem. They could go through and win the thing, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to be a 2 seed. Or they could lose on the first day, and they'll probably still be a 2 seed.
Yeah, no, and a lot. Remember, others are in that mix as well. And we'll have, by the way, Brian Bennett, he writes for The Athletic. A couple of members of the Athletic.com staff, including Mitch Sherman, will be in studio with us. He's in Central Texas, in the state of Texas this week, or early this week. So Brian will come on with us at 5 o'clock and explain the brackets, the bubble, and his opinion of where things are. Now, one interesting note from Saturday, you had game day in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I did not see this. I don't think I heard it until somebody else brought it up. This is Reese Davis and Seth Greenberg and LaFonso Ellis and obviously Jay Billis. All of them have been on this show. We haven't had Reese on this season, but those other three, in fact, LaFonso was on with us on Friday, and he was explaining about the tournament and what could happen and whatever else in matchups. Like we might see Duke and North Carolina next week, maybe we'll see Arizona and UCLA next week again, too, because they played and UCLA won that game. In the Big 12, Big 10 challenge, too soon? That cracked up a lot of people. If you have a sense of humor, yes, some people may be, oh, my God, stop. And some might have thought he was dead serious. But Reese Davis throwing it out there because of all the scuttlebutt, whatever speculation is out there, whatever does happen in the future between the Pac-12 and their television and media deal.
I'll just tell you, if you're the Pac-12 and you want this to all stop, get your deal done. Just get it done. It'll all stop. It will all stop when you get your deal done.
Well, they're meeting. The CEOs meet this week, and eventually the presidents will meet as well. Pete Thamel today in the ESPN article was discussing all of that and what they need to get done. And one of the things, of course, was that they do have a CEO meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was funny. It was a, very, apt, little. It wasn't a shot or a jab or anything. It was a little apt little joke to make given what's going on currently. And, he's obviously a guy that's very heavy, not only in basketball, but on the football side of things. So he's seen and heard, plenty of the discussion going on. So, yeah, nice little crack there. And I don't see how anybody in their right mind, keywords right mind, could be upset by such a thing. I mean, that's clearly a joke. And even if it wasn't a joke, it's still not that serious.
I did not see anybody upset, though. I did not see
but
that.
you kind of referred to my point is just if anybody was, that's just ridiculous and they're not in their right mind because that was very clearly just a soft little thing there. But, yeah, I mean, that's a story that, didn't really change too much over the weekend. Still clearly is of very high interest. And, some people have taken to just having fun with it. Other people have just taken to being, condescending douchebags, and to each their own, I guess, on that front. But, we've tried to just ride that wave. And, we're like everybody else that wants to just see what's going to happen at this point. Kind of tired of the talk and just ready to see, what the end result is going to be. And it certainly feels like something's going to give probably this week, at least what they're meeting on Tuesday.
I don't know.
I mean, what's going to happen, this week that'll be all that different from the previous few weeks of speculation. I don't know, but hopefully something gives because this is dragging on. And I know it's got to be incredibly frustrating for the Pac-12 fans out there. And for Big 12 fans, I think that they're just excited to see, what the outcome is going to be. And if that means some new schools, somehow or another, which I'm still not buying into, mind you. Like the whole time I've been of the opinion that I don't think that anything's really changing. I think that, the Big 12 is going to stay put. I think the Pac-12 is going to stay put for the time being. And if I'm wrong, I'll be, more than happy to get on here and say how wrong I was. But that's just my take on it. But I know that there's been lots of fire and lots of smoke for various reasons. So, I'm with everybody else on the edge of my seat, so to speak, waiting to see what the outcome is going to be. But, man, this has been one long roller coaster of a ride for the Pac-12 in particular.
All right, we will have today at 3:30 Chris Lovell, who covers Texas Tech. He's also the men's and football color analyst. He'll join sideline reporter for football, color analyst for basketball. So he'll join us here momentarily. Mitch Sherman writes for theathletic.com. He covers Nebraska, covers college football, but he actually is in Texas doing a kind of background story on the roots of Matt Rule and the state of Texas and the High School Football Coaches Association. He will join us today at 4 o'clock. Jeff Howe covers Texas. They began spring drills today. And, of course, all eyes on Arch Manning among the newcomers on campus at UT. There are many schools. Florida State was one that started spring drills today, and I'll get to a list of a lot of the others. I have all that. We'll do that again at 4:30 with Jeff Howe. Brian Bennett on Bracketology and more. And then David Hellman, Fox Sports on the NFL Combine at 5:30, Paul's Top 5 at the end of the show. Also, in studio, Jason Fowler, Texas State University. From San Marcos, drove up I-35. Why anyone would ever want to drive up through Austin at any time with the traffic the way it is. Of course, he didn't even use the loop from San Marcos. I would have paid the toll. He's in studio today as he's kind of just watching what we do. Young man who's trying to get himself involved in advertising, marketing, media, whatever. And so good to have Jason in the studio today.
He's the first Texas State student I've ever met during the week. So that also makes him the first Texas State student I've ever met who did not reek of beer. So they party down there, man. San Marcos, they let it go.
Yeah, no. I a lot of my friends who were in high school that went to Texas State, that's exactly what they do. Also, Sports Tonight, what we do here, and then Emory wraps it into a big bow, puts it in the slot at 10:30 tonight on the CW. We'll have our 4 best segments and or combination of interviews and segments today at 10:30 tonight. But coming up next, Chris Lovell covers Texas Tech and his thoughts on what does Tech do going forward. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI. Got another email. This is from a patient that came into Waco from the Houston area because, well, they were looking for a more affordable way to get an MRI. All of the MRI machines are fantastic. The one at Ideal MRI, state-of-the-art technology. Dr. Rob Maxey and his amazing staff, they have what you need when you need to have a way to find out what is bothering you. Whether it's your hip, your lower back, it's your neck, your shoulder, your knee, whatever part of your body, and your doctor suggests you get an MRI. $497 or less. $497 or less every single time. Not $497 and then all of a sudden it's $1,500. The average MRI is around $1,100. So you do the math, you're going to save at more than 50% the first time you use Ideal MRI. I've been inside their machine. I've always gotten the images almost immediately. Let's say I had an MRI at 6. One time I got the images that evening, that night. One time I did it morning, got the images by the end of the afternoon. They're going to help you with that and also put it up where your doctor can grab it in a portal too. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas Marketplace, just off I-35 in Waco.
During Ram Truck Month, shop the greatest selection of new inventory in Central Texas at Allen Samuels. Ram trucks have all the quality for work or play, with impressive towing capabilities, heavy-duty payload capacity, smooth ride, and a luxury feel interior design. If you're looking for a truck that can do it all, come see the possibilities of a Ram truck. And if we don't have exactly what you want in stock, we can help you build the custom car, truck, SUV, or van of your dreams. Shop Allen Samuels, DCJ.com, or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Chris Lovell, sideline, Texas Tech football, also color analyst for Texas Tech men's basketball, and all of a sudden, thud, there's the story after a tough loss over the weekend that Mark Adams no longer at least suspended by Kirby Hocutt as the men's basketball coach. Chris, thanks for your time. I'm sure it's kind of tracked some things down, but and I know this is kind of blunt, but is Texas Tech looking for a reason to move on from Mark Adams?
I don't know if that is the case. I think, I mean, obviously we all know that, you know, if you're losing, the vocal folks, there's a lot more of those than when you're winning. I think this is just an incident that occurred last week, and I think they're investigating it, or I think the word was inquiry, and I think that is ongoing, is what I'm gathering, because we still don't. I mean, as I'm sitting here talking to you guys, I'm not really sure who's in charge of the program right now. I mean, obviously Mark is suspended, and I mean, they've got a game Wednesday night, and I'm assuming they're practicing this afternoon, and I'm not real sure who's running that practice. And so I think that it's you know, it's an inquiry that is, I guess, ongoing, and I'm not real sure who's in charge right now. So that it's just all very awkward and tricky right now, for sure.
So do you know precisely what happened?
No, I mean, I'm going off of the release, you know, and everything, and it heard some things about what had went on. I believe this was something that happened middle of last week, and then obviously, I think Mark just chose his words poorly, is what I'm gathering, and I think that it's 2023, and that is very tricky, as we all know, and it's, if anyone, you know, any sort of racially insensitive comment, it should be taken very, very seriously. And I think that's what they're trying to determine here. And then, you know, and obviously there's been more that's come out. I mean, Jeff Goodman has a separate incident and all that. I'm sure that's I'm guessing what the inquiry is not just about the one incident. But I think that you're fact finding right now. But the tricky part is that there's a game Wednesday night, and the whole thing is it's bad timing. It sucks. There's no winners in anything like this, and where we go from here is anyone's guess. I think that all options are on the table here. I think many people feel like Marcus coached his last game here, And I think they have every right to feel that way. And I think there's other people that feel like he could be reinstated at any minute. So I think those players will largely determine what goes on here, because whatever they have indicated and what Kirby and his team, I guess, found out, or, you know, because look, I'm around this thing more than most people, you know, and you know, you broadcast these games, you're around these teams and these programs, but I'm not there every day. I have no idea what has gone on or what went on. But I mean, that's what Kirby's task is trying to figure out, you know, what the daily dynamic is, and how things that are said and how people are treated and what their feelings are and all those things. And you just have to make the best decision about who you want in charge of your program.
So, Chris, it seemed like, you know, he was the perfect seamless transition from Beard when that change was occurring. And, you know, then obviously this year it's not been exactly what, you know, was hoped for. Obviously, there were some struggles along the way. And then it always just seemed like, just from the outside looking in, there's always some scuttlebutt, always just some kind of whispering in the background, just always something feeling a little bit off. And then this story drops, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that seems like they could be part of it. But that's from the outside looking in. It seems like it's been a little off kilter this year. Has it felt that way, being up close and personal? Does it feel like this is, you know, the exact same way the program was a year ago? Does it seem like something has been a little off kilter?
Well, I think what you're touching on is that things feel off when you're losing. When you start out 0-8 in the league, people are unhappy. And last year they were a scary team. Nobody wanted to play them. I mean, they were really, really good. And, you know, you're just a few points away from moving on to the Elite Eight, and lost to a Duke team that, as we know, was loaded with NBA folks and all those things. And then this year, you go to Maui, you lose 2 of 3. You start the conference season out 0-8, because there wasn't a lot being said when you're winning 4 of 6 and you won 4 in a row. You know, there's not a whole lot of scuttlebutt out there, but this is just comes with losing. I think that's just kind of the deal. And I know there's been plenty that's been said and written out there. I think a lot of it is speculation, but I think this just kind of comes with the territory, unfortunately. And, you know, if Mark, you know, if he said something he shouldn't have, then he's going to be held accountable. But I don't pretend to know what happened or exactly the context. I think we have to all be careful there. I'm just going off of the release that was sent out.
So, you know, it's a program that was on the verge of a national championship with like seconds from that. And now here we are, they Beard to Texas, which at the time, and even if it was, you know, it made sense. And now we know what's happened to him. And now Mark Adams, who could walk on water last year, it appears he could be gone. I saw the name. This is from people who cover basketball. Grant McCaslin. You've giggling. He former Tech assistant coach. He was fantastic with Scott Drew at Baylor, and he's done a great job at North Texas. Would that even be someone you think would be on the radar?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule that out. I mean, I think a lot of people have connected those dots. I mean, I know Grant, you know, I've known him for a long time and know him a little bit anyway, I should say. And, you know, I mean, if there's a change made, I think that's somebody that, you know, would have an interest in this job. I think this is a good job. I think it's probably much better now than it was 5 or 6 years ago, based on what you just said. There's, you know, when they get a bad crowd here, there's 12 or 13,000 people in the stands, and they've got a $50 million building across the street that's a basketball-only building. I mean, so you've got support, you've got facilities, but you need stability. And I think that's, you know, trying to determine what's going on here and how to proceed is what Kirby is tasked with. But, you know, and I'll be honest here, if there's a move made, you're trying to find a basketball version of Joey McGuire. I mean, that's what you want, because Joey was an outside-the-box hire. Tech was criticized in some circles for hiring somebody like Joey, but he's been proven to be the perfect fit. I think that people around here are all in with him, and I think you need the basketball version of that. And I think to a certain extent that's what Chris was when he was here. I just think it obviously it had a shelf life, and I think he moved on to another job, and now we sit. I think it's just wild to think that, you know, a year ago you had the most chaotic game I've ever attended with Beard and Adams on separate sidelines in front of a 15,000 plus, and now neither one of them, you know, could potentially be in charge of a basketball program. It's just wild to kind of process that, but that's the reality of it. But I just don't know how this is going to go and all that. And look, Mark's been great to me. I think a lot of him. He's been around these parts for a long, long time. I never would have suspected that he had a racist bone in his body, but it's 2023 and there's just certain things you can't say, but I don't pretend to know the context and all that. And I know you're asking about Grant McCaslin, but there's probably a lot of people that would have some interest here if there's a job opening.
Chris, how much does Kirby Hocutt need to make outside the box hires, given the fact that he's had several coaches that have been fired for just these, women's basketball, softball, Billy Gillespie, all fired for kind of similar things where their relationships with the team got toxic?
Yeah, and it's funny how people have revisionist history. Kirby Hocutt had zero to do with Billy Gillespie. That hire was made before he got even on, took the job here. But yeah, I hear your point. And I think when you're anywhere for as long as he's been, there's going to be, things that come up that you're not okay with. I think that it's very fair to attach anything that when Kirby's tenure is a athletic director that he should have to answer for that. But I also think that, he's very well paid and that comes with the territory. And I think they've tried to do due diligence here, which is, I think, why you haven't heard any sort of resolution yet, because I think they're trying to make sure that they have all the facts. But yeah, I think they take, student athlete treatment very seriously here. And there's been some examples where things haven't gone right. And I think they've made changes to the, and look, nobody tries to put anybody in place that you feel like is going to mistreat a student athlete. And I think they've tried to adjust that. But when you get enough on your resume that things like that, that's a fair question for you to ask. And so I think they have to be very careful about how they proceed, not just here, but if they were to make another hire. That's why I say, you love a guy like Joey who had zero attached to, him as far as anything negative towards student athletes.
Chris, thank you very much, man. We appreciate it. Your thoughts about the Big 12 will have their first football season with the new schools, along with Texas and Oklahoma, since the last time we spoke. Yormark and the Big 12 have worked out their agreement, the exit agreement with Texas and Oklahoma. Your thoughts is everything now. We know the ending, we know the beginning, and yet we still don't know about the future because of might be expansion somewhere down the road.
Oh, I think you can almost guarantee that you're going to get some sort of expansion. I don't know what that looks like. I think we've all spent a lot of time speculating on it, but I think Brett Yormark has basically said everything. He's told you everything that he wants to do. He's done most of it with the exception of expansion. I think that's coming. It's just a matter of what that looks like. I think, I've even been told that, Gonzaga has been widely reported, but I think he's got a heavy interest in UNLV just because of the city of Las Vegas and the way he thinks and kind of an outside the box. And we've all focused on all these Pac-12 schools, but I think the Big 12 is sitting in a really good spot right now. I think that, you're not the SEC or the Big 10. Nobody else is either. But I guarantee you that the ACC may look at you and go, I kind of like their situation better than ours. And we already know that the Pac-12 would suggest that. So I think that there's more news coming. It's just a matter of who and when and what we get there.
All right, so we know who the Pac-12 has in their conference. Whatever happens, happens. But let's be selfish, Chris, because you especially travel. I think San Diego State and UNLV need to be the first teams they add just so we can go to those cities. Would you agree?
I'm not going to disagree with you on either. I do know enough to know that they have looked at San Diego State, and I just don't think they feel like that moves the needle at all. I've been to San Diego many times. It just doesn't provide what they're looking for, and I think the consultants and the folks in charge have told them that. I do have concerns about Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is very much tied to Mark Few. I think that there's a brand there. But if Mark Few's not there, what exactly is Gonzaga? Can you prove to me that they could sustain that basketball presence and that brand if he's not there? And I think there's a lot of people that have concerns about that aren't really sold on that. But Brett Yormark is continuing to look out into the future, and I know that he feels basketball is undervalued. We've seen his comments, and that's where some of this stuff enters. But I just think he views the city of Las Vegas as a huge revenue generating opportunity. What that exactly looks like, I'm not real sure.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Lovell, RedRaidersports.com, but also he, of course, is the men's basketball color analyst sidelines for Texas Tech football. Around the corner, theathletic.com college football writer and columnist Mitch Sherman and more. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, got a lot of great deals going on right now at Richard Carr. They are the people that you can count on. Not only for new vehicles, but pre-owned vehicles, and also for great customer service as well. They're the people that I've counted on anytime that I've needed to get my car fixed up over the last year. And right now, for you and your eye that might be looking at the new or pre-owned or just price cuts or customer service, whatever it is you're looking for, right now they have a Texas-sized selection at Richard Carr. Over 150 vehicles are on the lot and ready to drive home today. That includes dozens of Sierra trucks. And right now, qualified buyers can save thousands on new 2023 GMC Sierra SLT 1500s and get great financing on new 2023 GMC Sierra trucks. If you're looking at SUVs, you've got the luxurious SUVs with the 2023 Buick Envisions, but without the luxury price tag. Smooth and quiet ride. Qualified buyers can get lease payments with $5,000 down cash or trade at $269 per month or save thousands on the purchase of a 2023 Buick Envision. They also have a lot full of quality pre-owned vehicles, as I mentioned, cars and trucks and SUVs in stock, many of them under $20,000, affordable, thoroughly inspected, and ready to finance for almost any credit rating. Richard Carr has quality vehicles ready to drive today, and if you're not looking to buy a vehicle, you're just looking for that customer service that I mentioned, and you want to drive your car or truck a little while longer, their award-winning service department is standing by to keep you on the road. Go to the website, richardcarr.com, to see their service specials and set an appointment for quick and reliable service. In business for 23 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs, run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
The future's bright. The time is now. Destiny is calling. Can you hear the sound?
This isn't just another song. This is the soundtrack of life at Baylor.
There's a spark in your heart and a fire that's in your eyes.
If you're ready to take a big step toward a bright future, tap the banner below to check out the music video for a glimpse of life at Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of health care while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of health care has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance, and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Mitch Sherman is going to be here in studio in the next probably 15 minutes or so. We'll go to that segment, but he'll join us here in a minute. I saw this, the SEC is moving, it's just a matter of time, to a 9-conference game schedule. Brian Kelly, LSU's coach, and people have had their opinions on this, but most everyone, it seems like, I don't know if everybody in the conference is agreement, 9 games, but it's going to happen, and it needs to happen, and it'd be great. I've been in this for 3 decades, and no disrespect to any of the schools that we play outside of the SEC, but they just don't excite me. I want to play the best. I came here to the SEC because I wanted to play against Alabama, A&M, Auburn, the great teams. In our new scheduling, we will get to play Alabama every year. Ole Miss every year, A&M. That's really why I came down here. I want to play those games. I think playing 9 SEC games is great for your schedule, prepares you for the opportunity to play for a championship, but also play for a national championship.
Yeah. That's funny to me that a guy could get so bored at Notre Dame that the only cure for said boredom is the SEC. So it kind of shows you where the perception is of the SEC games and the challenge that it is. Now, with Brian Kelly, I think it was clear that it was time for both of them to move on. But when you think of, man, nothing's more exciting than playing in the SEC when you're the guy who was the head coach at the college football program that gets to make its own rules for 100 years, that's saying something to me. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably taking it a little bit different. I just think it's a guy talking about, the place that he works and saying something positive, which, is not that surprising. The guy likes where he is at LSU and within the SEC, and quite frankly, who wouldn't? It's the top conference. It's got all the competition that you want, as he outlined there, and obviously a strong chance every year to make the college football playoff, or a no-brainer chance to make the college football playoff every year, at least one team, and certainly in the future, at least 2 to 3 teams probably every single year, and probably some years with maybe even scratching the itch for 4. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out here in the near future. But, yeah, I mean, they came off of a great season. There's a lot of high expectations. He's, got some good foundation, and just sounds like a guy who, is, playing the PR game and tooting the horn of the conference that loves to toot its horn more than anybody. So he's fitting right in, if anything. But, yeah, I mean, I could see where maybe the time at Notre Dame got a little bit, plain Jane after a while, although you were playing Michigan and USC and plenty of other pretty good schools. So I don't know how to take that from a Notre Dame standpoint. I mean, I guess they're probably taking it as, oh, really, you got bored? Well, you never won a national championship, so, maybe you shouldn't have been so bored after all. But yeah, I mostly take that as just, tooting the horn of the SEC, which he's very much a part of right now. And look, with that 9-game schedule, I can see where, I mean, who is out there that you haven't played already that's really going to get you fired up to play? Because there's not going to be anything quite like playing Alabama or playing Texas or Oklahoma here in the near future, or playing your regular rivals like Ole Miss and others along the way. So it's going to be fun to see how that works out. That's going to be a fascinating change, is to see that extra SEC game in that schedule. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Mitch Sherman is here from theathletic.com. We're going to take a break. We'll come back with him. He's in studio. And this is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, a hidden gem. Look, if you are a bourbon fan, especially local Texas bourbons, that's the best place to go. They have an unbelievable selection. They're always churning the roster there, and they always have new stuff to go along with it. It is springtime now in Texas. That means that you're going to get your springtime brews rotating through the craft brews. They've got all that there. Great customer service, a speedy drive-through window. They're available on DoorDash. Look, there is almost nothing I can say that they don't have available at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank. Check them out on Instagram.
Cars priced right both day and night. At Richard Carr in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Carr in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Carr in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard Carr in Waco, Texas.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Here we go, the second hour of the 4 o'clock hour, 365 Sports in studio. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. And in studio with us, a guy we've known for quite some time. He covers or works for The Athletic, covers Nebraska football in Texas to do a lot of research and background to write something about the connections and roots of the Texas high school football coaches and Matt Rule. Mitch Sherman in studio with us, who's been on the road for quite a bit. So you're down in town. Let's ask you, first of all, this. What has been now a couple of months later, what's it like in Lincoln? I know they've started, no, they don't start spring drills till March 20th, but what has been Matt Rule era 2 months later?
Well, it's been pretty remarkable to see how excited Husker Nation has grown over Matt Rule, and it's now 3 months. So November 26th, we're a little over 3 months, I think, if my math is right. And I think people have really begun to understand who he is and what he brings to Nebraska. It wasn't, when the hire was made and Trev Alberts announced the hire a couple days after Thanksgiving. I think there was initially a lot of excitement. It's like, hey, there's an NFL coach who's coming to Nebraska. But there was also some, hey, we've been down this road before with an outsider who came in from the NFL and was going to bring his system and, had his way of doing things. And, that hasn't worked. And, the homegrown coach hasn't worked. And, the former coordinator hasn't worked. So there's some hesitancy, or initially was some hesitancy on what Nebraska was getting. And, I think what people have seen over these 100 days or so is that, one, he's a great communicator. Two, he's extremely genuine in what he says he actually means and does. And then, three, he has a plan. This is a guy who has built 2 college programs, 2 for 2, in going to Temple and going to Baylor, coming up through the ranks at Temple and then going to Baylor and fixing things. And, I wouldn't say it's all that similar what he has in front of him at Nebraska in comparison to Baylor or Temple, only from the standpoint that Nebraska's been losing. As far as resources, what he's inheriting with a roster, it's pretty starkly different, especially when he came into Waco in 2017 and inherited that situation. So, people are excited, genuinely excited at this point about everything that they've learned and seen firsthand from Matt Rule in this time.
He was in the NFL for a few years, but can they even really think of him that way? Like, not like Bill Callahan, who was a near NFL lifer. Like, that's kind of a different comparison when you look at the NFL guy who comes in.
Yeah, it's not the same. Matt Rule's a college guy who spent 3 years or 2+ years in the NFL. And I think if you go back to November 26th, the morning, or November 28th, the morning that the announcement came out, and it's like, okay, Nebraska, and actually even the week before that, in the days before Thanksgiving, it was apparent who Nebraska was zeroing in on to hire for this position. Right, I just mean right then at the very beginning, there was some hesitancy, like, okay, you're going to get an NFL coach. Is this going to be a situation similar to what Nebraska saw 18 years ago? And then I think the answer has been a resounding no, that he's a college guy, and his system is set up to work at a college program, which is the direct opposite of what Nebraska had with Bill Callahan when he came in to replace Frank Solich in 2004, who was a guy who started in college but then went and built his name, built his system in the NFL. Rule's system just might not be fit for the NFL. I think the way that he emphasizes culture and the expectations that he has for everyone inside of his program, it just works so much better seemingly, at the college level than it ever could at the NFL, where you're dealing with a 35-year-old father at 3 as your starting linebacker.
Yeah, I don't want to call it like rah-rah, but some of that rah-rah stuff, that kind of motivational, doesn't quite click with the 35-year-old, like you said, or the 30-year-old father of 3 or what have you, like it does with an 18-year-old kid. So I know we'll get into your trip here, but where did it kind of start for Matt Rule, do you feel like, or where did he need to start with Nebraska football to start to get the transformation underway?
He started at home. That's what he did when he was at Baylor. He started here. He talked to people within the Texas High School Coaches Association. Actually, I think he started by talking to college coaches who had been successful in the state of Texas and asked them, what do I need to do to start at home? And they directed him toward the Texas High School Coaches Association. So he went there and put on the full court press. And there was nothing that he could do that was too much, too over the top, too polite, there was no task that was too small for Matt Rule to take on himself when he got to Baylor, as it related to appealing to the Texas high school coaches. And it's not the same kind of group. He couldn't go hire 3 Nebraska high school football coaches and put them on his staff, because it's a state of 2 million people, and you just don't have the same the same depth in coaching talent at the high school level. Now, there are good high school coaches in Nebraska, and Nebraska signed 8 players from its own state. There were 15 about Power 5 signees from the state of Nebraska, which is a lot for Nebraska. I realize that's like a little corner of Dallas, but hey, for the state of Nebraska, Nebraska should get all of those guys, all of them that it wants. Maybe there's 15 Power 5 signees from the state of Nebraska in 1 year, and Nebraska wants 10 of them. Well, they should get 9 or 10 of those guys. That's just, it's a one-state program. And, yeah, there's going to occasionally be a kid who says, hey, I'm going to Oregon. There's nothing you can do. I want to go to Oregon, or I want to go to Oklahoma. There was a kid this year who wanted to go to Oklahoma. And there's probably nothing that anyone could have done to get him to come to Nebraska, no matter who the coach was. So you're going to miss out occasionally, but they should get almost all of them. So what he did, as important as Texas was to him when he got to Baylor, that's how important Nebraska was to him when he got to Nebraska. He didn't leave the state of Nebraska for about 10 days. He went to work. He went out to visit high schools. It was December. It was a contact period. He assigned Ed Foley, who from Baylor, to be the point man, to run point in the state of Nebraska. They used social media, and they just started to hit the ground. And by January, they had won people over. You started to hear the same kinds of things from Nebraska high school coaches and parents and players in the state of Nebraska that we had heard several years ago from the state of Texas.
What have the coaches you've met with or seen or spoken to, what's been their feedback on what you're doing, and also their thoughts about Matt?
Yeah, so in Texas, I've just been here today. I was at Arlington Martin this morning, where Matt Rule went to find his tight ends coach, Bob Wager, who, of course, is a huge name in the state of Texas for all the work that he's done over a couple of decades up there in Arlington. I stopped by DeSoto. People know Claude Mathis, the coach there. Nebraska's actively recruiting players at DeSoto. I went to Temple, sat down with Scott Stewart, the head coach at Temple, this afternoon. I'll be some other places the next couple of days. I wanted to hear it and see it myself as opposed to getting on the phone and talking with coaches. I wanted to go into the schools and see the kinds of things that Matt Rule and his staff have seen, and be in the places where they've had conversations with high school seniors, with high school coaches, with assistant coaches, with guidance counselors. So I think it's been really enlightening from that perspective today to go to some of these places and just to hear the little stories, the little things that made a difference when he was at Baylor, and how he won a lot of the people over who then sent him players. And these are resources, again, now that he's in the Big Ten, that he's going to try to come back to Texas and tap. And if the first 3 months is going to be an indicator, he'll be successful at doing that.
I've noticed Ed Foley's tweets. He's been to every small to medium-sized town in Nebraska eating hamburgers and pizza and whatever local fare they have.
He knows how to play the game.
Yeah.
But again, the thing that I think people find when they meet him is that it's genuine. This isn't a situation where Ed Foley is going to Runza, which is the Nebraska, it's the Whataburger of Nebraska. Yeah. And he's going there and he's ordering the sandwich, and he's tweeting the picture of it, and then he's chucking it in the trash 10 minutes later. Like, you really get the sense in talking, unless they're the greatest actors in the in the country for college football coaches, that it actually does matter to them. And Ed Foley will go into these schools, and some of these schools are places that Nebraska hasn't gone in to recruit a player in years. But he wants to go in and get to know the coaches and, meet the people that he needs to meet and ask the questions that an assistant coach at Nebraska should know about a high school in the state of Nebraska, so that when somebody who's now an 8th grader becomes a 10th grader and an 11th grader, and they start getting recruited by Iowa and Kansas State and Oklahoma, that Nebraska has an edge because they were there 3 and 4 years earlier and developed these relationships. And some of that, amazingly, even in Nebraska's home state, even with Scott Frost, who oozes Nebraska, he is Nebraska, it wasn't happening. I think it was taken for granted by not just his staff, but other staffs that came before him at Nebraska over the last 20 years, that they would just get those players. So it took an outsider, truly a staff of outsiders. There's not a coach, a full-time coach on this Nebraska staff who has spent really any amount of time in the state of Nebraska. He retained one guy, Donovan Raiola, his offensive line coach, who's been at Nebraska for 1 season, didn't play at Nebraska, hadn't coached there previously. His brother played at Nebraska. It's a name now that people know, with his nephew as the #1 player in the country out of Phoenix. That's it. That's the only connection there was to the previous staff among his 10 full-time assistants. There's some others on the support staff who have connections to Nebraska, but it took an outsider really to come in to begin to fix some of the problems that existed within the foundation, not just of the program, but around the state.
Yeah, how much did he just reinstill belief amongst the fan base in Nebraska football and the pride? I mean, I don't think the pride everyone knew, but just a belief that, like, hey, we belong, we deserve to be on a different level because it has been such a struggle seemingly for so long. There just seems like with Baylor, he came in one of the most downtrodden times there ever was. By the time he left, people were pumping green and gold. They were flinging it. There's a passion there that's never goes away, but how much has he kind of lit a fire under the fan base, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think that's still to be determined, but I think he's off to a good start. And, it's not just him. It's his boss, Trev Alberts, who was an All-American at Nebraska and a big name. And, people know him from his broadcasting career. And then he went to be the AD at a smaller Division I school, Nebraska Omaha. And he came back to Nebraska and fired Scott Frost after a year and a half on the job as the AD, and there's a kinship between Rule and Alberts that you can't, again, not something you can fake. The two of these guys are very much on the same page with the way that they think and the way that they envision a program is supposed to work, and not just a program, but an entire athletic department. I won't say that Matt Rule has anything to do with some of the successes that Nebraska athletics has experienced since he came in around December 1st. But I also think there's an energy around the place that has gone up several levels because of what he's brought, the positivity that he's brought, because he wants his football team to lead the way, not just with football, but with all athletics at Nebraska. And as football goes, other things tend to go within that athletic department. And I will say that there's a little bit of something going on where you see the basketball team under Fred Hoiberg experiencing success for the first time in 4 seasons right here in these last 2 or 3 months. And Matt Rule and his players are at these games, and they're getting people fired up, and they're bringing recruits, football recruits, like Dylan Raiola, the #1 player in the 2024 class, who's sitting courtside at a game a couple of weeks ago. It's not like he's coaching the basketball team. It's not like he's coaching the wrestling team or the women's basketball team or the baseball team. But I do think that, and he said this, and Alberts has said this, that as football goes, other things go. And that's already started to, I would say, show itself in a small way.
You didn't get to know him really until were you at the coaches convention where you had a chance to sit down with him?
Yeah, in January.
And get to know him a little bit?
Right. Of course, I saw him in November and December when he did press conferences, but the first time to get get to be one-on-one and chat with him and get to know him was at the convention, and then multiple times since then.
So let's tell Mitch something we should tell him about Matt Rule that Matt doesn't want us.
Yes, I'm all ears.
No, but he is someone who has a macro version of things, and he knows how to work it out on a micro level, I would say, with Matt Rule. Like, he knows what the big picture is, and he knows the little steps to get there. Like, he knows that there's a lot of little things that a lot of coaches don't think. And it surprises me to hear that coaches at Nebraska just thought they could walk into a place and, with a red N on their shirt and be like,
inside the state, yes.
After not doing that for a while. Like, that is strange, especially Scott Frost. To me, that one feels kind of strange that he wouldn't do that, especially given how it happened with him, because that's what Tom Osborne did, was the relation. He was going to own the borders of that state. And then how Scott Frost never picked up on that was kind of surprising to me.
There are high school coaches in the state of Nebraska who say that visits that they got from Matt Rule's staff in December and January were the first that they had received from coaches from Nebraska since Osborne retired. And Osborne...
That was 1997, by the way.
We're talking 25 years ago, a quarter century ago. And not to say that every staff that came through, Solich, Pelini, Riley, Frost, not to say that all of them dropped the ball entirely on the state of Nebraska. They've recruited and developed good players from within the state. But I think as far as having a true appreciation for what they needed to do, it has been very inconsistent. And Rule has set out to fix that problem.
Yeah, one of the things when we saw him and the coaches, Garrett McGuire mentioned, like, getting off the plane 2 days after they'd announced that he was going to be there. And then people like the baggage guys going like, hey, how are the wide receivers going to be? He's like, I really haven't met any of them yet. Like,
may not even have had a roster yet.
Everywhere I've been in Texas today, in the schools that I've been, we've talked about Garrett McGuire. And there's a feeling in the state of Texas that there are big things ahead. And not just for Garrett. It's not just Garrett McGuire. Susan Elza, everywhere I've been today also, I hear things about Dr. Elza and where she's going and, what this position as the chief of staff for Matt Rule can mean for her career. I don't get the sense that this is where she intends to land and spend the next 15 years. I mean, she's probably going to be an athletic director at a Division I college within a few years. Same kind of track for Garrett McGuire, who is the youngest coach in the Power 5 at having just turned 24 years old. But, as I was discussing a few minutes ago with Scott Stewart down at Temple, he's been doing this for 15 years. When he was 9, he was sitting alongside his dad, Joey, breaking down film at Cedar Hill and getting a sense of what it was like to be a coach as a 9-year-old. Now, granted, this was like 2008, which is crazy to think that he was 9 in 2008 and now he's coaching wide receivers at a Power 5 school. But even the kids that I talked to today who've met Garrett, kids from these Texas high schools, Jeremiah Charles up at Martin, he's a wide receiver who signed with Nebraska in this 2023 class. He's 18 years old. He's 5 years or 6 years younger than Garrett McGuire, who's going to be his position coach. And I asked him, hey, what's that like for you to have a position coach, not a quality control coach or a GA, but a position coach, a guy who's in charge of everything that has to do with your career, who's 24. And he said, man, I love it. It's great. I can identify with him. He's like me. We think the same. We talk the same. So, sure, there may be something about his inexperience where he's got to pick up on aspects of his job that other people can show him. But more than that, Bob Wager, who's twice Garrett McGuire's age or more than twice his age, he says that he's learning as much from Garrett or more from Garrett than Garrett is learning from him. So it's really intriguing, and it's going to be so intriguing to watch his career because he's another guy I think is going to be doing things like what his dad's doing as the head coach at Texas Tech. Garrett's going to be in a position like that probably before all too long.
All right, so you're going to head back. We appreciate you coming into our studio because we've had you on many, many times. What is your thought, just your own opinion, even on the Big Ten is fine. They're fine, and they've added USC and UCLA. That's in about a year. They're only going to get bigger, better, faster, stronger, and the SEC will do the same thing. What is your, just as a college football guy and fan, of what's going to happen, in your opinion? What eventually happens with the Pac-12?
Well, I mean, this is a fluid story. I mean, you asked me a week ago, I might have said something different than what I say right now, but my colleagues at The Athletic, I'm keeping up with Max Olson's content that he's putting out and other writers about Stuart Mandel. There's been news on this front with the Pac-12 potentially splintering, and I would say right here, right now, I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Big 12 is going to be a benefactor. Maybe the Big 10 is going to be a benefactor of the Pac-12 essentially breaking up if that's what ends up happening. I mean, the Pac-12 may be relegated to mid-major status before all that long, if there is a Pac-12 left in a couple of years. But right now, it seems like a feeding frenzy among the SEC, the Big 10, with the Big 12, hungry and knocking on the door for some of what those conferences have got. And obviously the Big 12 has new schools entering next year, Texas and Oklahoma leaving the year after that. But I don't think the Big 12 is going anywhere. A few years ago we had this conversation and everybody thought the Big 12 is the one that's going to end up going away. When Nebraska left the Big 12, part of the fear was, is there going to be a Big 12?
Yep.
Is there going to be a conference? Nebraska needed a conference. It's not Texas. It's not Notre Dame. They had to be able to go to a place just because there aren't they need that TV revenue. They need what a major conference can add. So you can't blame Nebraska for jumping for the security that the Big Ten offered. But here we are, more than a decade after Nebraska left, and I think the Big 12 is positioned to probably take some of what the Pac-12 is ready to give.
They've been rated 3 times, and here they are on pretty solid ground.
Yeah.
They had Texas, OU recently, A&M and Missouri, and, of course, as you mentioned, Nebraska and Colorado. All right, man, great to see you. Appreciate it. You've been on with us. Now you get to see a little bit of at least what we do.
I'm impressed.
And,
I like this place.
Of course, we have a lot of different guests from The Athletic on our show as well, and you're one of them. Max, of course, we have him on weekly. Great to have him as well. Have a great trip. I'm glad everything worked out for you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Mitch Sherman, theathletic.com, and this is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. As men grow older, the testosterone level can change. It can drop. That's part of father time. It just happens to be you. 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues, whether it's a low energy, you're lethargic, something doesn't feel right, your sex drive, could be your sleep habits, something's off. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff, by contacting them, PettyClinicLowT.com, will set you up to get your blood work. He'll get the results. And if your testosterone level is too low, he could put you in a program to increase it and make you, feel better. Be the man you want to be, used to be, and need to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? by not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference, and that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Jeff Howe covers the University of Texas. Today, their first day of football spring drills. Obviously, over the weekend, the basketball team hammered Kansas to secure the #2 seed in the Big 12. Jeff on with Craig and Paul. I'm David Smoak. Jeff, thanks for your time. Was today unlike, Texas start of spring drills? I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of coverage, but was today different in any way?
I think, Smokey, if there's anything different, look at, the guys this Steve Sarkisian regime has recruited. They've got, I think it's 13, 14 early enrollees from the 23 class. And, you've got the entire 22 class. And, you're starting to see some of the bodies develop and what guys look like out of winter, coming off of winter conditions. And you start to really get the feeling like, okay, this staff knows the right types of guys to identify in recruiting from a physical trait standpoint. And we saw last year, the side of the ball, and there's certain position groups you can look and see it. You're starting to see player development in this program. Now, I'm not saying that problem is fixed or they've got it figured out, but you're starting to see tangible evidence that maybe for the first time in a long Texas is getting the player development piece of it right. Recruiting's never been a problem, but recruiting the right and developing them, that's, why Texas has been in the position it's been in for the last, 10, 12 years. But looking at the guys on the hoof, especially some of those incoming freshmen, Peyton Kirkland, Mitchell on the defensive line, and Jonte Cook, a wide receiver, it's starting to look like it looks much more like closer to what you would have seen from a Mac Brown type team as opposed to some of the teams we saw, under Charlie Strong or Tom Herman or even going back to Sark's first.
Jeff, I know that Sark said that Ewers and Manning will compete for the starting job. Feel bad for Malik Murphy and all this, that he doesn't, even get a mention in that. But is that if Arch Manning won this thing, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I would take it as a good thing because that means Texas has a quality starting quarterback. You know, I was at the availability today, and I don't know, I'm going to say Sark was taken out of context, but, you know, he was asked as the quarterback competition, an open competition, and he basically said, yeah, kind of all jobs are open right now. And I mean, if Arch ends up being the best guy, then he'll be the best guy. You know, you mentioned Malik Murphy. Well, you know, he's dealing with a foot injury again. So, I mean, it just feels like this is a really talented quarterback prospect that just can't catch a break. But I think what Sark was getting at was, look, I think the common line of thinking around Arch has been he's going to redshirt, he's going to sit behind Quinn, and then whether Quinn, you know, goes pro after 23 or comes back for another year in 24, he'll be more equipped to see the field, you know, the longer he sits and gets to observe some things. But, you know, what I felt like Sark was getting at with his comments today was, look, he's going to let both of these guys practice. They're both going to get reps. And, you know, if Art starts to take off and does show that he's the better quarterback, now none of us know whether that's going to happen or not, but if he does, Sark's not going to say, well, you know, the plan was the redshirt you, and we're going to do that. I mean, if Arch Manning is the best quarterback heading into the season opener, then I think that's Sark saying, look, if he is the guy, I'm not going to put this thing on the back burner. I'm going to start the best play.
Jeff, when it comes to Quinn Ewers, we know the mullet is gone. That alone was huge offseason news to know that he's gotten rid of the locks there. But, I mean, we got a full dose of him last season. Obviously, he came in with a tremendous amount of hype, flashed, and then also had some drawbacks as well, which is to be expected of a freshman player. But where do you see him improving? Where does he need to improve entering this season?
You know, it's funny, Craig. Like, I have to remind myself and my colleagues, we remind each other, you know, this is probably the closest beat to covering the Cowboys in college football. When you talk about off-season news, was the starting quarterback cutting his mullet and shaving his beard, and you know the true freshman quarterback losing his ID the first day he was on campus. So that's just kind of the circus around this place. But no, I mean, I'm actually working on a piece on Quinn Ewers right now that I'm hoping to have up here in the next couple of hours. And I think a big admission from him was, you know, heading into the bowl game when he spoke before the Washington game. He said, hey, I thought I had it figured out after the Oklahoma game. You know, in that game, what that game means to this program, and if you're a freshman quarterback, you go into that game and play well. And he did. Threw for almost 300 yards, threw for 4 touchdowns, and Texas won 49-0. I think he did feel like he had it all figured out. You know, he came back to the following week and had 3 touchdowns at home against Iowa State, and then it was just kind of this roller coaster of, you know, good, like I said, good for that Iowa State game, and then he was bad for a couple games. And you look at, you know, the Oklahoma State game where he's 19 of 49 with 3 interceptions, so where it was downright ugly at times. But I think for him, Craig, I think the growth for him was in the bowl game. When you look at kind of how that thing unfolded, where they couldn't run the football, Xavier Worthy, who Sark confirmed today, played the last half of the season with a broken bone in his hand. The vertical passing game wasn't there. You know, Washington was willing to give Texas the short and intermediate stuff, and whereas they were reluctant to take some of that, I feel like that was growth for Sark and Quinn, when they said, look, if they're going to give us, you know, these little, 4, 5, 7 yard routes, we're going to take them, and then we'll just move the ball in chunks. We'll just nickel and dime it down the field. And they were content to do that. And then Quinn got into a rhythm and had a really good game. He threw for 369, 370 yards in the bowl game. So I think that was really big growth, where he wasn't just trusting his arm to fit in the tight windows or hunting, kind of being a big game hunter and hunting that deep shot down the field. Was just patient, scanned the field, took what was there. And if he can continue to do that, I think this offense could be really good again, and in a lot of ways more balanced and better. Even though you lose Roschon Johnson and Bijan Robinson, I think it has to be more balanced, because you don't have the luxury of leaning on 2 NFL running backs like you had last year when all this.
Jeff, was the Gary Patterson news surprising?
No, Smoky, the only reason why I say it wasn't is I feel like the more, and you kind of started to hear some of this maybe late in the season, it wasn't anything against Sark or the setup in Austin or Texas. I just think he felt like he really needed to take some downtime and maybe really just completely unplug and get away. And we saw him do that. You know, after the bowl game, he was he was out at the college football national championship watching TCU. He said he wants to spend more time with his grandkids and kind of do the family thing for a little bit. So I think, and I think this kind of, and he gave us some good quotes in terms of just kind of what his year was like at Texas. I think whether he's a head coach or whether he's, special assistant, I think when Gary's around the game, he only knows one way to go about it, and that's full speed. I mean, he told us he was doing film breakdowns, doing stuff Sark never even asked him to do. He was just doing it because that's kind of what he's always done in terms of getting things ready for the defensive staff. So I just think he needed to completely unplug. And I think this too, Smokey. I think when you look at him taking another job, I think you've got to be out 3 years as a coach before you're eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. That's a really big deal to him, to get on the College Football Hall of Fame ballot and maybe be in the College Football Hall of Fame at some point. So I think he's talked about maybe doing some consulting work. Maybe, if he gets a wild hair in August, maybe coming back and working for Sark. But I think right now it's not really surprising because he really needed to take some downtime and just completely unplug and get away from football for a little bit.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise. I mean, he was holding on so tight at TCU, Jeff. I mean, we've talked about that at length. Do you think that things that he implemented or gave them that they'll take and apply a little bit, or would he have to be the guy because only Gary thinks like Gary to do those things?
No, I think the two things were, and he tried to be involved in, as much as Sark wanted him to be involved in, which actually turned out to be a lot. I think from a player development standpoint, and really more so in recruiting, kind of looking for, the toolsy type guys that he recruits. And I think one thing he mentioned to us, he and Pete Kwiatkowski have a lot of common ground just in the terms that, just in the way they view football in terms of, looking at prospects and trying to project guys. And, Gary said, PK's a guy a lot like me. Over his career, he's kind of done more with less. So I think they vibed on that. But where he was a really big help was, Texas wanted to implement, that coverage Gary Patterson's famous for, the match quarters, the pattern match cover 4, GPs run it, Pat Narduzzi's run it. You watch those defensive systems. That's how they operate. They had a real struggle in 21 trying to get that implemented. But I think Gary, being a secondary guy, knowing that stuff as well as he knows it, really tied together with Pete Kwiatkowski, who's been a defensive front guy his whole career, really helped tie the front end and the back end. I mean, you go watch Texas defense in 2021, it was so bad, Paul, and you guys saw it. I mean, I couldn't tell what coverage they were trying to run at times, what fronts they were trying to shift into at times. It was chaos. And last year, things flowed much better. It made sense when you watch replays and you watch, guys blitzing or moving around and replacement defenders moving into the right spot. Everything made sense. And I think a lot of that was Gary's experience with that pattern match cover 4, tying the front end of the back end. And I think they will take a lot of those principles going forward. I think those are the two real big areas of recruiting, and then just that cover 4 concept, the way Gary knows it and the way he teaches it.
How excited are folks about the potential of this wide receiver core, Jeff? I mean, on paper, Xavier Worthy, and then additions Isaiah Nayor coming back off of injury. Didn't even get to see him last year. And I know from his time prior to Texas, he's a tremendous player. A.D. Mitchell in the transfer portal. Jonte Cooks amongst their signees. I mean, they added every which way possible that you could seemingly add. What's the level of buzz surrounding that group?
I think the level of buzz, Greg, is that group needs to be much better than it was last year. You look at why Xavier Worthy, whatever the hand issue was or wasn't, the reason why, he was on the field as much as he was, the reason why Texas ran as much 12 personnel as they did, the reason why the backs were on the field a lot, and why Keelan Robinson got pretty involved in the passing game. They just never had a third guy emerge last year to go along with Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington. They thought it was going to be Isaiah Nayor, then the preseason knee injury happened. And they tried a couple of different guys. Casey Kane got a look at it. Savion Red got a brief look at it. Same thing with Brendan Thompson. But, they never really had that third receiver emerge. And now you've got options there, whether it's A.D. Mitchell, who looked good this morning. They were doing one-on-ones with the DBs, and that was probably the play of the morning at practice was Arch Manning throwing him a go ball, getting behind the secondary, and was a really good-looking throw and catch. You've got A.D. Mitchell now in that mix, Jonte Cook, like you said, in that mix, DeAndre Moore Jr., was a kid they flipped late from Louisville in their early signing period. So they've got the pieces. To me, the big piece is Chris Jackson as a new wide receivers coach. And for Sark, this is going into year 3, the third different receivers coach some of these guys have had. And I asked Sark about that after practice today. I said, what was it about Chris Jackson that you feel like, because that position coach, that had to be a hire and has to be a hire that Sark nails because of the talent in that room. You've got to get the most out of that group. And he said that the 2 things that really stood out to him about Chris Jackson were, stability. They need some stability at that position, but then also a guy that's been in the NFL a long time from a development standpoint, showing guys what it's going to take to get to the next level and getting the most out of these guys. So it's got a lot of potential, Craig. It really does. But that's a position at this point I'm almost like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. We've seen talented receiver rooms at Texas before, and it hasn't worked out, but I don't know that they've had one this talented in a really long time. And if Chris Jackson's the right coach, then they'll trust me, they won't have a problem finding a third receiver or maybe even a fourth this year.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention Whittington coming back. That's obviously was another huge boon for them this offseason, but go ahead.
No, that's fine. Jeff, one more thing. The men's basketball team finished out with a bang by beating Kansas. They were right there on that edge of slipping. They had the lead in the conference, and, of course, it didn't work out. KU still might be, without question, the dominant team in the Big 12 among a lot of good ones. Your thoughts about how they ended, and what are the expectations? Is this one of those with Rodney Terry? Has he done enough, in your opinion, no matter what happens in the tournament, or are there still people looking for a reason to maybe look elsewhere?
No, to answer the last part, Smoak, I don't think he's done enough yet. I think that's still to be determined by what happens this week in Kansas City, and then, hopefully over a couple of weeks in the NCAA tournament. I think when you look at how their season ended, I think the disappointing thing for Texas wasn't finishing second in the league and then missing out on the conference championship. I think it was that they know they didn't play very well against Baylor, and they had lost back-to-back games all year until they lost to TCU. It was just that it didn't come together against TCU, and that was back-to-back games where not only did they lose, they didn't play well. So Rodney Terry talked about everybody kind of just – it wasn't really anything schematic that they changed. It's just there was a refocused energy when they got back to practice after the TCU game. And he credited Jabari Rice, for being the guy that kind of got everybody back on the same page, and everybody was juiced on Senior Day playing against Kansas, and Texas led in that game almost the whole way and looked really good doing it. So if that Texas team from a mindset standpoint is the one that shows up in Kansas City and in the NCAA tournament, then I think there's no question Rodney Terry's going to have a chance to be the guy next year. But, if it's a little bit wonky, if it's a little bit inconsistent, if they have an off night where the juice isn't there, then, that streak of not making the NCAA, not making the second weekend since 2008, it'll go on another year, and then Texas will probably have somebody else in charge of the program.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Jeff Howe, 247, part of the Horn in Austin as well with us as Texas began their spring drills. One other note, let me give you others who started today. I have a list. Paul, you sent me one that's been updated. Cincinnati, Brigham Young, and Texas from the Big 12. Clemson, UTSA, Washington, Kentucky, and Florida State all opened spring drills today.
It's what, one of the criticisms, I can't remember, we were talking about how the NFL, you have to know the days of everything and everything has to be the same and it's all that. That's one thing that's weird about college football is that you can look 3 weeks maybe before spring football necessarily starts, and some schools haven't technically told everybody that they're doing that yet because they don't have to. That's kind of a weird thing. I'd like that cleaned up in the new administration. Just have
Everybody
the same
starts
days.
At the same time.
Have the same days.
Yeah, people have different semesters.
Yeah, you have your bowl game in early December versus somebody's got it in January.
I mean, and especially
or in the same. Keep it announced.
All right,
it
for
at the
Michigan
same time.
started on February 20th. There will be, for example, we just had Mitch Sherman in who covers Nebraska. They start on March 20th. Baylor, March 21st. There are a lot at Notre Dame, March 22nd.
Okay, so either Harbaugh's a psycho or that bowl game thing, like Craig just mentioned, bowl games are different. They finished well after Baylor.
But I don't know about their semester
starting
breakdown.
before,
They're going to have their spring game on April 3rd, where Baylor's late in April?
Yeah, I mean, I understand your angle there, and that would make sense, some uniformity, but I actually kind of like it because it spreads it out. Otherwise, we'd have the same 5 weeks, and then, everybody starts the same, and then after 5 weeks, everybody's done, whereas this at least stretches it out to, a couple months of, at least some headlines. Even if it's not the juiciest or most interesting in the world, it's still some activity going on. So I like it for that reason. But, yeah, it is sort of all over the place for sure. And I don't know how everybody goes into deciding, when they should start versus, when they ended and all those types of things. I guess it's just all about how the calendar lines up, I suppose.
That's like 5 weeks off for Michigan from when they ended.
Yeah.
Like really, legitimately 5 full weeks off before they –
I don't know. Like maybe he wants to get it out of the way. Yeah. Maybe it just didn't make sense. I don't know. Like I don't know what the science is behind that. To your point, but yeah, I do kind of like that it does spread it out a little bit further. So we're not just having one big weekend of like 100 spring games all on the same Saturday. And I think with recruiting, you have to do it that way. Like if you're a big time prospect, I mean, how are you going to go visit Florida and LSU and Texas and Michigan and all those schools if everybody's doing the game at the same time? So I think that it allows for some recruiting freedom as well, and everybody to kind of have like Oklahoma, for example, wants to have like a big sellout, right? Like they did last year. And I know others have done like promotionally some of the same things of having the big turnout for attendance in the spring game with all the recruits in town. So they build up for special events like that too. So you don't want to have it all landed on the same weekend and not have the guys available. So yeah. It could probably use, though, a little bit more uniformity. I was just saying on Texas, like, that's a crazy wide receiver group on paper. Like, to his point, though, Jeff's, I mean, they need to actually go out and prove it. And he's absolutely right on that because Texas has, had their fair share of hype without substance at times, and everybody has to some extent. But it'd be very easy to let the hype kind of get out of control this offseason between the Arch Manning stuff and just Quinn Ewers and this wide receiving core. I mean, you have to ultimately go out and do it. But, man, on paper, yeah, sure, there's the loss of two really great running backs. But that wide receiver group with, A.D. Mitchell and Jonte Cook and Jordan Whittington coming back and Xavier Worthy coming back and Isaiah Nayor, we didn't even get to see him last year. That's pretty salty talent-wise. Well, that really is.
And it needs to be because they're going to have to find a way to pass their way to wins. Last year in games where it came down to Quinn Ewers having to throw them to wins, he wasn't there yet. Now, I think that he can, but part of that might have been just the overall wide receiver group and him not gelling completely together. Part of it was sometimes they would get in this mode where Bijan would be a little slowed up early and then they'd kind of forget about him, which was dumb. That's how the last coach got fired. He forgot Bijan Robinson existed. So, they've got to find some balance. And part of that, if you look at last year, so those games they lost when it came down to here's at the end of the game, you can't run the ball, and Ewers had to throw it. He just wasn't there yet. I'm not trying to knock him, but they just didn't win the games that way.
Or Xavier Worthy would drop wide open touchdown passes like they did in the bowl game.
And now we maybe know, and I'm not sure, obviously if that's true about him having the bone issue. I'm not saying if that's true. We wouldn't say it if it wasn't. By the way, on the everyone playing games at the spring drills, Justin R., we had to put our spring game on campus this year since Taylor Swift decided to have a 3-night stop in Tampa in mid-April. So I guess that's USF. Justin, am I right? I think it is. Yeah, I see the Bulls as your logo on the chat room. All right, it's 4:47. I want to welcome one of our newest sponsors, Bear Ridge Golf Club. Bear Ridge Golf Club. Tomorrow, we have Lee Trevino. Yep, the Merry Max will join us tomorrow. His thoughts about the changes on the PGA Tour. Today he was in California, and he was on the first tee on a Pro-Am doing a fundraiser for those Medal of Honor recipients. So he'll join us tomorrow in the 5 o'clock hour.
Should we get him to tell the story about how he paid off a bet with a guy all in change in the back of his car?
Sure. Yeah.
I want to hear that story.
Or that time he started around with no money in his pocket and had to, scared him to death, and so that's why he had to play well. He learned how to play in big money games without money, and that's how he became razor sharp.
Hey, I want to go back to something when I was asking Mitch about. I didn't like the way I delivered my questions to Mitch. It just didn't come out right. But I brought up Matt Rule, and if I was Matt Rule watching that, and I'm like, rah-rah, when I brought that up, what I meant by that, just for my own sanity here, was like the motivational side of things. I think that you can take young men and young women and really build them up that way a lot easier than you can with some grown-ass men who already have their minds made up and they're millionaires. And that's what I was trying to get at.
No, I think you're right to say it. He's not – when Lou Holtz went to the Jets, he tried a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
There have been college coaches that have come and gone.
Let's do community service together.
That were doing
kind of
that stuff. Where in the NFL, it's different. And, like you can have team activities, but you're also – like off the field stuff. I can't call you in April when we're not supposed to meet and say, hey, I need you to come here. We're going to have an activity where all the linebackers and safeties are doing this activity. You can say, well, I'll come. I'm not doing anything, but you can't make them do it.
Yeah.
As where in college football, you can make them do these things if they need to. But in the pros, it's a union thing, and you can't just say you got to be here. You can't do this. So those kind of things, even though they're like well-intentioned, you can't do that. And then, again, if a guy is – Matt Rule's, 45, 46 years old, right? Well, he might have a guy on his team who's 38, and you might be sitting there doing the old college rah-rah thing, and the 38-year-old guy is like, man, you're not that much older than me.
I don't even know if it's – I think one of the most difficult parts about being a professional coach, an NFL coach, you're right, that sometimes a coach in the age of a player who's been in the league 17 years, like how are you going to tell Tom Brady, what he's doing wrong or whatever? And Bruce Arians, I think, probably did a few times. But – it's the NFL ownership. David Tepper had never owned an NFL team, right? Mm-hmm. Billionaire. He'd be a billionaire?
He's, I think, the second richest owner in the league.
Okay. And no matter what, no different than Jerry Jones with the Cowboys or others, is that I don't think that when Matt Rule got there, this is just kind of just listening, that, he was going to have all the decision-making. Well, there was a general manager there, and that guy has his job to do, and he needs to have his ability. But I think that NFL owners are really involved, heavily involved, and probably it's their franchise. But I think NFL owners are now more involved in daily stuff at that level than ever before, and I think that can make it difficult.
Well, that's probably the Jones effect on everything, right? Because the Cowboys are still the most relevant team in the league, despite the fact that relevancy should be about when you win, right? So part of that is because their owner is super involved. The Patriots, Robert Kraft is super involved, but he has a guy that runs all the football side for him, and Bill Belichick down there, so it kind of works. And David Tepper, was a minority owner with the Steelers for a little while, and the Rooney Group, and the Rooneys are the most hands-off, owners. And I don't say that in the sense that they're not involved. It's just they believe in running a corporation.
Let the teachers teach, let the coaches coach, that kind of thing.
Here's what we're in charge of. You tell us what you need, and we'll get it for you. And the other thing about Matt in the NFL, I think for him to be as successful, he would have been better off going to an ownership group that knew what they were doing a long term. Not that I don't know if the Teppers will or don't, but they're starting from the bottom as far as their knowledge goes.
I just think, like Mitch said to begin, I just think he's better suited for college football, period. I just think that he's a really good college football coach, and Nebraska will see that in short time. I'm sure he could thrive if all things were equal and better, whatever the issues were in Carolina. I'm sure he could have fared better if they were different in a better way. But I think that he's made to recruit. I think he's made to pitch mom and dad on heading to Lincoln, Nebraska, more so than he is to try and swoon the free agent to sign the $100 million deal to be his next receiver. I just think he's better at selecting and winning over and recruiting talent than perhaps, the draft process and free agency and those types of things. I'm sure he could excel at that if situations were different. I just think he's made to be a college football coach, but that's me. And so I think he's where he needs to be. He got his taste of the NFL, and it was what it was, but he's where he belongs, in my opinion.
I don't think there's really, if you look at sports, I think there's only, if you look at the majority of professional sports teams, only a minority of those owners are really good at being that. I think there's
rich?
Yeah, being owners of sport. I mean, they're good at being rich, otherwise they wouldn't be owners, but that's a different thing. But being the owner of the sports team is a is a more narrow road to walk than I think that they realize. And not what you have many that are like Dan Snyder, but I think most owners are closer to Dan Snyder than they are to Dan Rooney, right? Like, I think that those, like, most of them probably fall, all right, on the other side of the
Hunt at Kansas City.
Fantastic. They're really good. They're a lot like the Rooneys, but they also came in through the same kind of thing, and now that's the next generation. Like, they've been built up through their family. They know how to do it. So yeah, I think that's one that's closer to the Rooneys.
Isn't that interesting that they're like that? And Chiefs, I know Mahomes, but they're like that, and they have long, elongated success.
How long
now,
they
for
own
the
the
longest
team,
time, though, they've owned them since the beginning.
I mean,
it
so
was
that's
a
the
family
thing, though.
deal.
Like, I know they got Mahomes. They got Patrick freaking Mahomes and Andy Reid all at the same time. And, they do. I don't think their process changed the last few years. I think the talent changed and the coaching changed. But, yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and their way is preferable to Jerry Jones trying to get all of the glory for the construction of the Dallas Cowboys' next Super Bowl roster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, it's 4:55. We have a lot to get to. Brian Bennett wrote a story today in theathletic.com. March Madness, of course, has really begun. It's not just the start of the 68-field tournament, the team tournament, but even to me, it's as much already some of the buzzer beaters, some of the miracle stories of teams getting an automatic bid in the one-bid conferences. He will join us on his thoughts on the Big 12 and many others, the hot seat and not so hot seat. All of that and more. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. I bought my car there in 2020. I was looking for something new. I had a Chevrolet Tahoe forever, almost 400,000 miles, and finally it decided, that it just didn't want to run anymore. So I went over to the dealership, and AJ is somebody I'd known, and I said, hey, I need a little help here. I said, here's what I want to do. This is my budget. I'm not going over this per month. Here's what I can put down. I'm not going over that either. And here's what I also want. And you know what? It took about maybe an hour or two, but it was interesting as we're on the lot. AJ and I were talking. I looked over to the side. I saw a couple of the pre-owned cars, and one of them just popped out at me. So we went over there, looked at the car. The overall process did not take long. AJ never tried to get me to buy something I didn't want or for something more that I wanted to spend. He's fantastic. So we can discuss Ted Teague, the general manager, who is amazing. The inventory that is fantastic, pre-owned, and of course, even what you want with Ram trucks and Jeep and SUVs and more. But also it's those who you deal with. And one thing about AJ, he will every once in a while send me a text, not to try to sell me something new, just to check on how things are. And it's been over 2 years since I bought that car from Alan Samuels. Their service department is fantastic. If I need to get an oil change or my tires rotated, it is absolutely flawless how easy that is. And yes, they have fantastic inventory of cars and trucks and more. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. it feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and free, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
NCAA March Madness around the corner, and conference tournaments, of course, some of them kicking off tonight, some of them finishing up as well. Brian Bennett, theathletic.com, joins us on 365 Sports, who wrote an article about who's up, who's down, who's in, who's out, what teams need to do or not need to do. Brian, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. How complicated is this, or is it pretty simple that you know who the automatic qualifiers are, you know what conferences are going to get 6, 7, 8 teams, and then there's some that just, man, they just need to pray?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of moving parts. I mean, none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. So, sometimes it depends. If there's a team in the Big Ten that's on the bubble, it kind of depends on what's going on in the ACC. It depends if someone steals a bid out of another conference, and there are upsets in a mid-major league where maybe a team you didn't expect gets in. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's still, I believe, some competition for that last number 1 seed. A lot of things could happen in the middle of the bracket, and I think the bubble is pretty crowded for those last 4 or 5 spots in.
Brian, just starting locally here, Baylor had a really rough game against Iowa State. They've lost to them twice. They have to play them again on Thursday. Do you think anything that happens on Thursday moves them off the 2 line?
Yeah, maybe not that game specifically, but I think, if Kansas State makes a nice run in the Big 12 tournament, I could see Kansas State jumping Baylor. I think they're right there. I have them 1 spot behind them on the seed line. I think, a team like Marquette, who's had a really nice year and, of course, beat Baylor pretty handily early in the year. If they win the Big East tournament or, get to the final, they can move past Baylor. And there's a couple other teams that would have a shot. So definitely I think Baylor is – they're my last number 2 seed, which means they're a little bit vulnerable on that line.
Who do you see as what do you see as the most interesting storyline right at this moment?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's usually the top of the bracket. So, I wonder, is Kansas going to be the number 1 overall seed and get to the Kansas City Regional, which would be a pretty nice path for them to go through Des Moines and then Kansas City. I think you can make a really good case for that, given how many quad 1 wins they have. They have more than any team's ever gotten to this point since the net era started. although their metrics aren't as strong as a team like Alabama or Houston. And then in UCLA, could UCLA be a one, or will Purdue hold on to that spot they had when the committee revealed its top 16 teams? So that's probably the most interesting thing to me. And then of course the last 4 teams always gets a lot of attention, and I think there's a lot of candidates for that right now. I've got Nevada, Wisconsin, Penn State, and NC State, and then Rutgers is my 5th to last team in. So you're talking about 3 Big Ten teams right there on the cut line. So a lot of interesting things could happen in that Big Ten tournament as well.
All right. So other than their name, can North Carolina or will North Carolina get in?
Well, I think they probably have to win the ACC tournament. There are some scenarios where they could get to the ACC tournament final and maybe get in, but there is just not much on their resume. They're 49th in the net. They have one quad one win, and that quad one win was over Virginia, who's number 30 in the net. So if Virginia even wins its first ACC tournament game but doesn't play well, it could drop out of the top 30, and all of a sudden North Carolina has no quad one wins, and no team has ever gotten in with an at-large with no quad one wins. No one's ever gotten in with just one. So North Carolina's got a lot of work to do. They don't have a lot of bad losses. That's the one good thing you can say about them. The metrics are okay, but they've had all season to prove that they could beat a good team, and they haven't done it. So for me, I need to see them in that ACC tournament championship game, having beaten Virginia, maybe beaten Miami. But even then, it's going to depend on what other teams have done.
Who's a 4-seed or lower that could make it to the Final Four, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think you guys have all seen TCU when they're at their best, right? That's a really strong team. I've got them as a 5-seed right now. They could be a 4. When it all shakes out, we'll see. But I think that's a team that's really good. I think Creighton, is a team when they've got it going and when they're shooting the ball well, is a Final Four threat. Texas A&M's been playing really, really well in the SEC. I'm not sure people realize just how good they've been. You guys probably do. It's in your state. But nationally, I'm not sure people have been paying that much attention to the Aggies, and I've been real impressed with them. So those are a few teams I think, outside the top 4 that I'd keep my eye on.
Buzz Williams, SEC Coach of the Year, well-deserved, I say.
Yeah, what a turnaround from this time a year ago, right, when he was railing about the NCAA selection process. It shows you, if you win enough games, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. So let's get to the bottom line of facts of how you get in. Obviously, the one qualifier conferences you have to win the tournament. Like Oral Roberts went 18-0, but they still might have to win the tournament, most likely do. Kennesaw State, what a great story. There was only one way for anyone from their conference to get in, win the tournament. And then, as you mentioned, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the SEC will have a big chunk. What are the criteria, just in case we need to make sure when people go, well, how come they didn't get in? What are the main 2 or 3? How do you get in other than winning a conference tournament?
Yeah, I always say that it's more art than science. There isn't one thing you can point to and say, if you do this, you'll get in. But for the most part, the 3 things that the committee looks at: who'd you beat, who'd you play, where'd you play them. So not only do you have to have a lot of high-level wins. People talk about quad 1 wins all the time. Those are very important. Quad 2 is also, those are also nice wins. And a lot of times the committee will put the quad 1 and quad 2 records together and see how many you got, see what your record is in that quad, and then kind of weigh them against your bad losses in the other quad. But the thing I think people kind of ignore a lot is the strength of schedule. I mean, we just talked about Texas A&M. They ended up with a nice record last year, got to the SEC tournament final, and had a lot of quad 1 wins, but their schedule was so bad that it was easy for the NCAA committee to leave them out. So it does matter who you play. And then it's mostly, what did you do with the opportunities that you had? Some teams just don't get a lot of opportunities if they play in, say, the Mountain West, or, even some teams in the Pac-12 don't get as many opportunities as there are in the Big 12 or Big 10 or conferences like that to play those quad 1 games. But it's more, what did you do with the opportunities that you had? Who did you schedule in the non-conference? And then, just how many big wins do you have, and especially wins away from home. It's pretty easy to win games at home sometimes, but, to be able to go away from your home court, especially in a true road environment in the conference, those are big, big differentiators for the NCAA.
I know RPI used to be a huge deal, but is RPI what is used to figure out what is a quad 1 win? No, RPI is dead. I mean, you can still find it, but that was a bad system. It was basically just based on your record and your opponent's records and your opponent's records. It was a very flawed formula.
So this is all based on the net, which the NCAA has not never released the actual formula it uses, but a lot of it's based on efficiency, how you play per possession, some of the same stuff you see at KenPom.com, a very popular site. And so a lot of that, and then based on kind of who you played and that sort of thing. So that helps to divide up the teams into quads. And there's a way of determining that. So like if you play a team that's in the top 30 at home, that's a quad 1. Team top 75 on the road is a quad 1. So things like that, and it goes down and down. So it's all kind of based on that, and there are still some flaws in it, but I think if you look at the top teams in the net, it correlates pretty strongly with what people think are the top teams in the country.
Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma, the only way they get in. Oklahoma State was kind of in a pretty good position, but they went into a slide. Are they the only way those three get in is if they win in Kansas City all the way through to the championship game and win that too?
I think Oklahoma State has a chance if it can win at least 2 games. And I think the first one's against Oklahoma, and then Texas, if I have that correct. And those would be 2 nice wins. They're 6-11 in quad 1, so that would get them up to 8 quad 1 wins. And in that conference, I feel like anybody who's done that well in that conference probably deserves to get in because that's the best conference in the country. And they've had some really nice wins. They obviously struggled here in the last few weeks, but they've had some nice wins overall. They have a shot. And then Oklahoma, yeah, probably. I mean, they don't have a winning record right now, but they do have a lot of nice wins and not a lot of bad losses. So that's another team. If they got to the final, they might have an argument, but it'd probably be better for them just to go ahead and win it if they got that far.
Yeah, they're psycho. I mean, in a basketball term way. I mean, they beat the living crap out of Alabama. They just had another nice win, but man, and then all of a sudden you look up and they just disappear for a while. Thanks for a lot, man. We appreciate your time, Brian. Great stuff. Will you do this after each day's results, or how will you? What can we expect?
Yeah, we'll be updating them every night. They'll run in the morning. We'll have the updated conference champions, and then on Sunday we'll have one, and then probably another one after some of the conference title games on Sunday, maybe an hour before the selection show. So if you're a nerdy bracketologist like myself, we got you covered. All
right, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Brian Bennett, The Athletic bracket. Every single day he's going to update it, and you just saw him on Twitter as well. It's theathletic.com. All right, so the Big 12. We'll come back and discuss that a little bit. We have David Hellman at the bottom of the hour on the NFL Combine, which is wrapping up with some of the good stories there, and maybe a couple of them, if they're not, are not bad stories, but maybe a disappointment or two. We are 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. I just popped up on my feed. There's specials for this week. Select choice in prime New York strip steak from $8.90 a pound all the way to $15.50 a pound. I was in there today, walked in the door to look at a couple of things that I wanted for the rest of the week, and I said, I can't resist. Even though I have some bone-in ribeyes, I ordered 6 more, a little bit smaller. Normally, the bone-in ribeyes are 1.5 inches thick. I had a couple of them, and the bones were not quite as large, the ones I got today, and that's fine, because I can use that for stir fry and some other pretty good stuff as well. Man, they're just fantastic at what they do. Boneless pork chops, $2.25 a pound. But they did have a big freezer, like one of those where you see a lot of brisket put in or turkeys. King crab legs, they're $40 a pound. I looked at those king crab legs. These are phenomenal. I mean, huge. And they're $40 a pound, but worth it. Also, snow crab legs, they're big as well at $19.99 a pound. German sausage, $3.50 a pound. Full-service butcher shop and bakery, and they're ready for you. Some are on spring break. Perhaps you've got people who are back in town that otherwise the kids are back from college. I don't know. And you're going to maybe have a really nice dinner or two along the way. Go there. They have what you need and the treats as well. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
During Ram Truck Month, get incredible deals on Ram trucks at Allen Samuels in Waco. Come see why Ram continues to win awards year after year. Browse online or come shop the greatest selection of new car and truck inventory in stock today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
The future's bright. The time is now. Destiny is calling. Can you hear the sound?
This isn't just another song. This is the soundtrack of life at Baylor.
There's a spark in your heart and a fire that's in your eyes.
If you're ready to take a big step toward a bright future, tap the banner below to check out the music video for a glimpse of life at Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, cause weight gain, and wreak havoc on your sexual desire and performance. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results, so if you're tired of being tired, I challenge you to man up and Google search Low T Waco or go online pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $150 a month, includes lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, follow-up visits compared to $395 a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T as board-certified physician consultations will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone available. Contact Petty Clinic Low T today, just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway. Petty Clinic Low T, helping men become the high-performance men they deserve to be. PettyClinicLowT.com or Google search Low T Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
A couple of notes here. And then David Hellman will join us in the next segment. Jon Jones, Craig, over the weekend, he's back. UCF, or UFC, excuse me. Not UCF, because they're part of the Big 12. Is he back? Isn't he been suspended or whatever, or just retired, or what?
Yeah, I mean, he's back. He's the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, he won the main event. And, I mean, I'm not, and I've tried to mention this before, but I am not as high on the UFC train as I once was. I mean, it's been a sport that I've loved for a long time, but it got to the point of where there was just too much of it out there for me to keep track of. Like, I lost track of, like, the weight classes and the champions because there was, like, half of them are interim, and it's just then you got into a problem that a lot of the boxing side of things had, where guys don't want to make the best fights. They want to have the easiest pass forward to keep making money and stay unbeaten, like you saw with Francis Ngannou, for example. So there's been reasons, and just like there's events every weekend now. Like you don't feel like if you got to watch this one because if you don't see it, there's not another fight for 3 months. Like those days are long and over, and that's when I really enjoyed it the most. Like every event felt special. Every event felt like it had like a name on the top of the card. And now I feel like there's still some of that, but there's a reason why Conor McGregor, even though he hadn't done anything of substance in like 2 years, would still be one of the biggest names right now if he walked in there. Same with Ronda Rousey. She's been irrelevant for years now at this point, but she'd still be one of the biggest names, biggest draws if she were to fight. So Jon Jones is right in that group. I mean, he's been around a really long time now at this point, but yeah, he's back, hopefully clean and with the law problems behind him, because he did have some issues with drugs. He had some issues with police, and just seemed like he was going the Conor McGregor route of totally, sabotaging his own career. And now he's getting a, third chance at life or fourth chance? I don't even know what it is at this point, but certainly getting a chance that is hopefully one that he will take full advantage of, and it might be his last one, too, because, you can be a great fighter all you want, but you are eventually going to age out. Like, that's inevitable. And so, he's got probably some of his prime still left, but it needs to happen now. Like, he can't afford another, like, in the streets of New Mexico, high on cocaine, talking belligerent to a police. Like, those days have to be over for him. But, yes, won the heavyweight title on Saturday night. And, good for him. He's one of the all-time greats. Some will probably argue the greatest of all time. I don't really have a fighting position in that argument, but it was, I guess, good to see for folks who love Jon Jones and people who are rooting for him to be successful in his comeback trail. It certainly gives them a bit of a jolt, in the UFC, because he does have that name power, that brand power that only so few fighters seem to have gotten on that type of a level. So, yeah, that was exciting and it was interesting to see, and hopefully will spark a little bit of a resurgence in the casual fan, because they've got the hardcores. The hardcores have been locked down. It's the casual fan that I think that they still hold on to pretty well, but I think has kind of like in myself fallen to the wayside a bit, because it's just so geared towards all the time, nonstop cards, nonstop events, nonstop titles, all that kind of stuff. But Jon Jones being back in the saddle, that does pique my interest.
Well, you were just saying, that's what I thought so, because he is a rock star, and he derailed his own career with some of the things that happened to him off the field, out of the ring.
It's
octagon.
Strange that they built themselves up in the wake of boxing's demise, but the same kind of thing is going on, because, it's hard to keep track. Like, boxing was the biggest when you could name the last few heavyweight champions of the world, right? Not just the guy who was the heavyweight champion now, but the guy he beat and the guy that guy beat, and so on and so forth. Now, it's just fallen by the wayside. Feels like UFC, like you said, Craig, they've lost their big names, so people are forgetting that. So they're in danger of going down that same road.
I mean, it's not all their fault either. Like the Francis Ngannou situation, Dana White said over the weekend, Francis Ngannou, who was just their heavyweight champion until recently, and now Jon Jones is, but the Ngannou-Jones fight won't happen. And what's the biggest fight they could possibly do? Probably that one. Mm-hmm. But it won't happen. Why? Because the same old reasons that I, outlined a second ago, and the same things that you got in boxing far too often of, like, trying to be protected, trying to protect yourself record-wise, or, and, hey, I totally understand if your route that you're taking as far as your decision-making is money-driven and you feel like maybe you're not getting enough, and there have certainly been fighters in the past that have complained quite a bit about the UFC. There's also a lot of guys who went out and won the fights they were supposed to and got paid handsomely. So, Dana White said Francis Ngannou is never going to fight in the UFC again. So, never say never. Typically they don't, and typically I would say there's still a crack in the door, but I don't know. That's pretty strong words from him. They negotiated with him for literally years, and still couldn't come to an agreement. And so those are the types of things that I think kind of hinder the product when you run into a situation like that, because there's a guy that him and Jones could have made just gazillions of dollars together in a fight. And instead, you want to protect yourself, and I get that to a certain extent. But again, that's sort of what hurt boxing at certain turns. But yeah, I don't think it's – I think, if you're a fan of UFC and you love mixed martial arts, it's maybe the best it's ever been. But I'm just saying for someone like me, and I can only speak for myself, who's not into every detail of the sport – yeah, like by the time you're talking about like the flyweight vacant champion who, I'm gone. But if Rousey and McGregor and Jones and these big money fights and all that, I'll pony up to the ring or to the octagon for that. But all of the other stuff in between, I'm too casual to pay close attention to.
I started paying attention because of the big fights. And again, that's kind of how I am in boxing. Who was the guy with the mohawk?
It's Chuck Liddell.
Chuck Liddell, who was the unbeatable guy, and then of course you had others who go, he gets beat, and then and you kind of looked for that. But I did notice that Jon Jones, because one, it was splattered all over everything I tried to get on that he fought. He won on the text line from Keilani. But did he fight? It wasn't Ngannou, or is it Stipe? Well, Ngannou, Craig just mentioned, he's not back. He might not fight again. Maybe there's interest in that at some point. But I didn't expect him to go out there and fight someone like elite. But he did take care of his business in his first fight in a couple of years.
Yeah, and he's, he made the move to heavyweight, which was always something that was in the car. Like, that was another thing, too, is like when John, before he got in trouble for like the 15th time or whatever with drugs, there was a lot of talk about him moving up to heavyweight and having a super heavyweight fight, like a real deal heavyweight fight featuring Jon Jones. And I want to say it was Ngannou was the big rumor there for a while, but I don't remember how much else. Was it maybe Cormier? No, because it wouldn't have been that. I don't know. I feel like there was a fight they were trying to set up for a while, and John either didn't want to or just the timing wasn't right to move up to heavyweight. Now he's at heavyweight. Now he's at his final, resting spot. And I think that will be good for them. I mean, that is always, when all is said and done, the heavyweight title is always the biggest title if the right guy's holding it.
Yeah.
And so I think they've got the best guy they probably can have holding it right now. Him and Ngannou would have been a great fight. But here's the thing. Ngannou don't want to fight Jon Jones, but he wants to go off and do these guess what? These super boxing matches where he's going to make $100 bazillion to fight Tyson Fury. And, if that's the route you want to go, great. But clearly you're in it for the money grab and not so much for the sport part of it, in my opinion, because you'd want to fight Jon Jones. You'd want to make that fight happen. But apparently that's going to be off the table. So I think John being back.
But he was fighting when Jones was out, though, right? It's not his fault at the timing of it, right?
It is when the fight's in front of you and you say, no, I'm going to negotiate for years and not ever come to an agreement, to the point where Dana White finally says, we're just done. We're not even going to talk to him anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how long you drug out that process, to the point where they don't even want anything to do with you now. So go have your big Tyson Fury boxing match, your little crossover. Maybe you'll eventually fight Jake Paul or something. I don't know. But that's the route he's going to go.
He's about 10 years away from fighting. No. Well, then Jake Paul will be old too. But
Jake Paul ain't trying to fight. Ain't trying to fight Francis Ngannou. That would be a death in the ring.
We have David Hellman coming around the corner. You could tell the passion Craig still has for it, or the knowledge of it. Then someone asked, TJ asked about the net that we were talking about, like quad one wins. The net factors in scoring margin, quality of wins and losses, net offensive and defensive efficiency ranked based on what you score or allow, strength of schedule, game location, and, of course, the bottom line as well, game results. So it's kind of a combination. Somebody mentioned algorithm. I don't think it's an algorithm, but it's a combination. It's pretty complicated to find out. That's why when you're in a conference that has all these teams ranked as high as the Big 12 has, and then they are beating each other up, even if you're like 8 and 10 in the conference or whatever it might be, you're going to get in because of your quad strength. All that is going to be very high. Oklahoma State was right there on the edge, but they slipped at the end. Had one really nice win about a week ago. Iowa State is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Oklahoma might be like that too, but Iowa State's going to be in, and Baylor doesn't want to see them. I know that, and they probably will right off the top. All right, when we come back, David Hellman, the NFL Combine is over. His thoughts about the biggest stories from Indianapolis. This is 365 Sports.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people. Good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with David Hellman of FoxSports.com.
By the way, congratulations. The Big 12 announced all of their various awards, men's and women's basketball. And I know that Paxton is going to blow his, he's not going to join us anymore. This is it when I say congratulations to Jerome Tang for being the Big 12 Coach of the Year. Yes, I do understand, Paxton. You felt like Rodney Terry could have been that. Paxton's more upset about, I think, the Bijan not winning Big 12 or Heisman Trophy finalist than maybe that. But congratulations to Jerome Tang, who was on our show with us last Thursday, I think it was, for being the Coach of the Year.
Well, either one of them deserved votes, but I would tell you about Jerome Tang. What put him over the top is everyone thought Texas was going to be really good. And when Rodney Terry took over, it was an awkward and terrible situation, but the team was still, they knew what it was going to be. They had really good players. Everyone knew that Texas was going to be good. No one thought Kansas State was going to be good because Jerome Tang had 2 players when he showed up in Manhattan and built them into a, maybe a 3 or 2 seed. So.
Yep, he had a great run. And the Saturday, everybody that was a favorite, I think, lost. Yeah, or at least what appeared to be the favorite lost on Saturday. We're now joined by David Hellman, Fox Sports, the NFL Combine. David, what is the biggest story, or what has been the biggest story, or one of the top 2 or 3 stories coming out of Indianapolis, in your opinion?
Well, I would say it's funny. The Combine already feels like ancient history with what's going on today. I mean, I think the story of the offseason is this is shaping up to be a year with unusual quarterback, like an unusual amount of quarterback movement, and we're seeing it. I mean, the second domino just fell. Derek Carr happened this morning, and now Geno Smith is under contract. I mean, it's rare to see this many quarterbacks potentially flirt with free agency. Obviously, Carr just did it. Geno Smith re-signed in Seattle. There's still a boatload of uncertainty with Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson. You got Jimmy Garoppolo probably going to change teams, probably going to be somebody's starter. Like I said, you don't see this very often. Daniel Jones, I guess the Giants have a little less than 24 more hours to try to get a deal done with him before they franchise tag him. So, I doubt all of those guys change teams, but, we've already had one in Derek Carr, a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback changing teams in the offseason, and I would guess we're going to get at least one or two more. I think it's very fitting. Everybody spent the week whining and dining in Indianapolis, and lo and behold, the dominoes are starting to fall within a few days of it all being over. So free agency opens in a little more than a week. I would imagine whatever's left to happen is probably going to come pretty fast and furious over the next week or so, if I had to guess.
David, what do you think about Derek Carr and his fit in New Orleans with his first head coach, Dennis Allen, and the weapons that they have there in New Orleans?
I think the Saints are a fascinating example of beauty being in the eye of the beholder, I guess. Because, if you look at it on paper, there's a lot of reason to think that a quarterback like Derek Carr could turn the Saints into certainly a playoff team and maybe a contender. They've had a good offensive line for years. They've got a receiver in Michael Thomas who won Offensive Player of the Year. They've got one of the better running backs in the league in Alvin Kamara. And their defense is getting older, but they've got very talented players, whether you want to talk about Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu. So, you look at all of that and you're like, ooh, well, the NFC South is one of the worst divisions in the league. The Saints are automatically the favorite now, and maybe they're good enough to put together 11, 12 wins and make a run at this thing. But then on the flip side of that, the NFL is a cruel business. You can also say, well, Michael Thomas really hasn't done anything in 3 years. Alvin Kamara had a bad year last year. He's also got some uncertainty hanging over him with the incident that happened at the Pro Bowl last year. Cameron Jordan's been in the league for 11 or 12 years. Mario Davis is an older player. There's no guarantee that any of that stuff comes to fruition. It's the type of thing that it can look very good on paper and then look very bad in reality. I think the Denver Broncos learned about that last year with Russell Wilson. So it's funny to see, or it's going to be interesting to see what's more likely to happen, I guess. Because, I could see the Saints winning the division and being a playoff contender. And I could also see it going horribly, horribly wrong. I definitely don't want to say it's all Derek Carr's fault. But you look at it and say, well, he was the starter for the Raiders for 9 years, and they got to the playoffs twice, and they won no playoff games. So I don't think you can just pencil them into the playoffs just because of a quarterback change. But if everything goes right, or if even most of the things go right, that could be a really interesting team.
David, you mentioned the NFL being a cruel business, and it is an industry that could have chewed up and spit out guys like Geno Smith. But here he is. He's entering year 10 next season. Hadn't done a whole lot of substance for the last 6 or 7 years, ever since his start with the Jets, which wasn't the prettiest of starts those first couple of seasons. And all he does in his 9th year, after seemingly just being a guy, is go and have a career year that now leads to a brand new big contract. Just what an incredible story Geno Smith is, huh?
It's awesome, man. I love stuff like that. And actually, it makes me see if you follow me here, because it's not totally the same thing, but it honestly makes me think of Dak Prescott. Obviously, polar opposite situations in the sense that Dak kind of hit it off right away as a rookie. But I just wonder, so much of this sport is just about opportunity and having somebody believe in you. You know what I mean? How many quarterbacks, and I don't want to detract from what Geno or Dak has accomplished. I certainly think that they're special players, but how many guys out there just needed the reps, or once they got the reps, needed the belief from the coaching staff? Would Dak Prescott have become who he is if multiple injuries hadn't put him into the starting role right away. And, would he have even gotten the chance if the organization didn't believe in starting a rookie? And then you look at Geno Smith and say, well, does Geno Smith really get an opportunity if John Schneider and Pete Carroll don't believe that he's been there long enough to get a real shot? They could have started Drew Lock because he's the guy that they traded for and bided their time and picked early in the draft and gotten Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, and Geno Smith could have just been an afterthought. But they believed that he could actually do something if they gave him the opportunity. And on top of that, he played well enough in his limited opportunities to earn that faith. So I just love stuff like that. And it just makes me wonder, how many guys didn't get that opportunity? Like, how many potential Pro Bowlers have we not heard about because they didn't get the shot, or they didn't get enough reps, or they didn't have the right injury benefit them? I love thinking about that stuff. It's fascinating, but it's such a cool story for Geno, the way it all worked out for him.
All right, so the Cowboys have tagged Tony Pollard. That was pretty much just one of those things you do. $10 million a year. What do you think he'll end up doing? Will he sign a new deal well before this even takes place?
It's hard to say. If the Cowboys want to sign Tony Pollard long term, and the noise coming out of the combine is that they do, I think they can make it happen. I mean, Tony's a fourth-round pick. He had a good season last year, but he certainly doesn't have the resume that suggests that he should be paid at the top of the position like a Josh Jacobs or somebody like that. I've spent plenty of time around him during his career. I think he's a low-key guy. I think he would love to just get something hammered out and have it taken care of. So, if they could come to terms on like a 2 or 3 year deal that paid him well and also helped them with their cap, I think it makes a lot of sense. I know not everybody wants that to happen. Paying running backs is dicey business sometimes, as the Cowboys have already found out with Zeke. But this wouldn't be that type of deal. I think if it were to happen, I think you'd be talking about 2 or 3 years. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, I don't see this being any kind of standoff. If anything, I think it's really more about what the Cowboys want to do. Because, I mean, if they go land, again, I think, I was on with y'all recently when we talked about Bijan Robinson. If they were to wind up with a Bijan, or even maybe not even Bijan, if they were to get a second or a third round running back, a guy kind of like Tony Pollard was, maybe they wouldn't want to commit to Tony for the long term. So, maybe they'll go through the draft and see what they wind up with before they have those conversations. But I do kind of feel like this is a situation where if the Cowboys want to get it done, they can before that July deadline. I don't think it's going to be dramatic like it was with Dak or some of the other guys they've tagged.
David, what do you think about Anthony Richardson's combine and what that means for his draft stock? He was already going to be a first-round pick, but he had this superhuman combine, and we know that he is athletically gifted, but, just so far through his college career, he either has these fantastic moments where he's unstoppable or you forget he's there. So he's going to have to find a place that'll develop him well, but he is shooting up the charts based on, what he did in shorts in Indianapolis.
I'm not trying to hate on anybody. I'm always pro player. Like, go get somebody to fall in love with you and get drafted as highly as you possibly can. Like, it's no skin off my back. It doesn't matter to me. But just speaking as somebody who follows the draft, talks about the draft, analyzes the draft, and also just as a fan of college football, that scares the hell out of me, just to be blunt about it. I mean, I'm an LSU fan, as you all know. I've watched a lot of SEC football, and I firmly believe, like, if you're going to be a top 10 pick at quarterback in the NFL, I need to see you kind of elevate your program, whether it's wins, whether it's stats, obviously maybe you won't have a good enough team to contend for a national title, but at the very least you should be worth some extra wins, and you should certainly be putting up the stats. And I never saw it from Anthony Richardson. Ironically, he had one of the best games of his career against LSU, and LSU still won that game pretty handily. Yeah, man, it scares me. But then on the flip side of that, and that's what's so fascinating, is I didn't see it with Josh Allen at all. It's probably one of my bigger whiffs as somebody who follows the draft. I had no faith that he could amount to anything in the NFL. You know, he had a mediocre career at a non-Power 5 school, and I just didn't think that was a recipe for success at the next level. And he's obviously proven me very, very, very wrong. So I guess if you're an optimist, you look at it and say, well, we can develop him into that or somebody like that. But then the pessimist says, like, man, if you can't even do it against South Carolina and Florida State, what are we talking about here? So it scares the hell out of me. I'm glad I'm not somebody that has to make that call, because I don't think I could bring myself to do it. Not with a top 10 type of pick. I would be too scared. But I guess scared money don't make money. So if you think you can go and turn him into the next Josh Allen, more power to you. But that is something that I would be very afraid to try to do.
How much do you buy into the size concerns with Bryce Young?
I don't think it's nothing. I really don't. You know, we're seeing it with Tua Tagovailoa, his predecessor at Alabama. He's a slightly built guy. You know, I ran into Tua at the Super Bowl a few weeks ago, and I was, even knowing that he was a smaller guy, I was taken aback by how just not physically imposing he was. You know, he looked like a regular dude. And obviously we're seeing Tua. He battled injuries in college. He battled injuries and now he's battling injuries in the pros. I was arguing with somebody about this the other day about Bryce's build, and they were like, well, he played in the SEC. And I was like, yeah, man, he got hurt in the SEC this year. Like he missed time. So yeah, I don't think it's nothing. I still think, again, I'm the type of person that looks at tape over everything, and his ability to process, his ability to see the field, his ability to maneuver in the pocket. He's obviously nowhere near as big, but he reminds me of Joe Burrow just in the way that he can buy himself time while still looking downfield. You know, not necessarily looking to run, but just maneuvering in the pocket to give himself time. He's incredibly smart. He does everything great other than the fact that he's, you know, 5'10", 198 or whatever. So it scares me, but I would still say he's the best quarterback in this draft class. So if you need a quarterback, that's the one that I would. That if I had to, you know, stake my reputation on one of these guys panning out, it would probably be him. But yeah, I do think the size is concerning.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate your time.
Thanks,
David
guys.
Hellman, you too. Fox Sports with us, covers the NFL, covers the Cowboys, and with us on Mondays at 5:30. And in the NFL, there are no off months, because now you go from the combine wrapping up to pro days, and then eventually you get to the draft at the end of April, and then, of course, right into the mini camps and OTAs, whatever they're called these days, and then camp, and next thing you know, here we go.
Yeah, it's pretty well established that it's year-round now at this point. I mean, that's the deal, and it's been that way now for a little while, and certainly not going to revert back to the days of long, you know, drawn-out periods of no news. I mean, they found their formula and it works, and others are if anything, copying it. It feels like, I mean, college football now feels like it's year-round, but again, that also has to do with new things like NIL and, you know, transfer portal as well, making it that way. But yeah, the NFL has carved out its you know, its year-round news niche, and hard to see that ever being any different now at this point. I'm with them on Anthony Richardson. Like I remember watching Anthony Richardson one week and going like, wow, this guy's amazing, do some crazy, insane things with a football in his hands. And then I saw him some other times and go, like, he doesn't look like he's the starter on this football team. You know, just kind of hit or miss when I saw him. And so I can understand the folks that aren't just like, oh, wow, what a special athlete and what a great quarterback, and I'm sold, and boom, here. I think there's reasons to be a little bit hesitant to just be all in on him and, as you know, a high first-round draft pick. But I'm fascinated to see how the dominoes fall outside of Bryce Young. And even with Bryce Young, like, who jumps up and grabs him first? It'll be really interesting. The quarterbacks are always interesting, but this year, definitely some fun storylines. And, yeah, Anthony Richardson's going to be I mean, like, to me, he's a guy that Washington would go and draft, and then he would be a bust, and then they would have to go draft in it, like Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. But, like he didn't play all that much. Oh, he's got this, and it just felt like almost I don't know. It almost felt not force is not the right word, but I don't know. It just feels like a guy that they would be enamored by what an athlete he is, and forget all of the other questions about like how much he actually played or this or that, and would just fall in love with that. So I'm sure some team will fall in love with the potential of Anthony Richardson, and surely there is some, no doubt about it. Dude's got skills, but I'm not like all in on like, oh yeah, absolutely, first round.
You
hear
about Anthony Richardson? All of it looks the part, but you see it. He's again. This is
right.
Now again. You never know exactly who's getting their information, but you hear this, that he's not really mature yet to understand how hard it is to work to be a great quarterback.
Yeah,
now,
that didn't even worry me other than just watch the last 2 years of him starting games.
He can grow into that guy, though.
Yeah, sure.
And so that would concern me more. But on the flip side of that, and I think more teams have to do this, if Andy Reid had the balls to sit Patrick Mahomes for a year, which he did, and then anybody can.
But Alex Smith was a really good quarterback.
Yes, which is why if you're drafting Anthony Richardson, you need it, to me, for that to work out.
You're not drafting him to play right away.
You need a similar situation.
That used to be the way it was.
Yeah, and to be fair, too, nobody was on Patrick Mahomes the way they are now. Nobody, when he got picked by Kansas City, was like, Patrick Mahomes to Kansas City? No, it was more like, what? Patrick Mahomes to Kansas City? Like, there was some build-up to him going relatively high, but that was not a foregone conclusion that Patrick Mahomes was going to be the next big thing. I mean, let's go redraft and let's see where he falls. He'll be the number one quarterback this time around, I bet you. He'll be the number one overall pick, no matter who the quarterback is.
But my point being that he had that, like, even drafting a quarterback that high, he had the stones to go, you know what, you're sitting down. Like, you're going to sit down. And
yeah, I'm just saying
not
that,
with
like,
Patrick, but with, like, just the roster management.
Right. Yeah. It's not like, though, I was just saying, it's not like they were beating down the door in Kansas City for Patrick Mahomes to start. But, yeah, you're right on that point. And I think Anthony Richardson could be a very fine player. I'm saying I understand the people who are a little bit hesitant about him going, like, super high. And, you know, that will be a question for some team to jump up and answer sooner rather than later, which will be, you know, one of those big burning questions from here until April will be Anthony Richardson, just like with Bryce Young and the other quarterbacks. But, yeah, I definitely understand there being split opinions.
You know, the one I would draft for, if it was me and I'm the Texans and I'm at number 2, and I know that I need a quarterback and I know that I need one that is the most NFL ready right now, I would take C.J. Stroud, and I think C.J. Stroud is getting kind of knocked because he's not as exciting as Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson. He's kind of boring.
What's the difference between C.J. Stroud and Fields?
Running.
Similarities. He's played at Ohio State.
Yeah, I think running, like, Fields is more of a runner than Stroud is. And
did you see how many yards Fields ended up running for this year?
Oh, yeah. It was a record. Yeah, it was crazy.
It's 1,000 yards, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was nuts. And again, the right system.
I didn't even know that.
And again, if the Bears build it the right way, they can have a Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts type thing with Justin Fields. But with me, if I'm the Texans and I want to run, especially they're going to run a Shanahan offense, I think C.J. Stroud would be great for that. I think he'd be fantastic for it.
But no one knows.
No one knows.
No one knows. Yeah.
But you know what? I read a couple different things of different writers I respect saying it feels to me, talking around Indianapolis, that scouts are like, yeah, C.J. Stroud's just so, you know, cookie cutter. It's boring, but isn't that good? Like,
he's fine. Yeah, he's perfectly fine, and he'll go 2 or 3 or whatever it'll end up being. And yeah, somebody will get a great quarterback. I'm with you. I think that he could very well. I mean, he's the one with the least amount of questions, it seems like. But yeah, I just feel like every year there's a guy you kind of becomes the hot thing and the kind of overreach guy, and I just feel like that Anthony Richardson.
There's always a quarterback that just like.
There's like a little bit too much being put on him right now, and hype and build up and all of that. I just feel like let's just calm down a little bit.
Still early.
Yeah, let's calm down a little bit with that. But no, he's got a lot of talent, no doubt about it.
I got one story involving Texas Tech men's basketball. This is from John Rothstein. Assistant coach Corey Williams has been named Texas Tech's interim coach for the Big 12 tournament coming up this week in Kansas City with Mark Adams on suspension. Earlier I said, well, I know one team Baylor doesn't want to have to face in the tournament is Iowa State. Well, they're going to face Iowa State in the opening round on Thursday up in Kansas City. All right, this is 365 Sports, and Paul's Top 5 is next.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Sausage wrap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jeweler, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:45. Or is it 5:55? Either way, it's the Top 5.
Top 5 combine risers. These are my combine risers. These are people I think you need to check out, watch for the names, and I would say that none of these guys will be a first-round pick, which is what – look, you can get attention in the first round. You win games by what you do in every other round in the draft. The teams that are good are the ones that consistently, especially in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, find not necessarily superstars. You're not always going to get, Tom Brady's in the 6th round. That doesn't happen. But guys who are contributors, if you drop a 5th rounder, in my opinion, who gets to their 2nd contract, that's a damn good, with your team, that's a damn good pick.
Honestly, I think that you get any draft pick now that gets to the 2nd contract because that means you want them. Mm-hmm. Like Tony Pollard's a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
Explosive as heck. I never realized how big he was. I always thought that he was like kind of not Devin A-Chain type, but he's going to – That's
he's lean.
Yeah, like he's strong as hell though. He always gets that extra yard or two. All right, so there you go. Here we go.
Number 5, cornerback from Maryland, Jacorian Bennett. Look, you're going to hear a lot also about Deonte Banks, the cornerback who's on the other side at Maryland. These two guys would have been good for any team in the country, in any league in the country. They were that good at corner for the Terps last year. But Jacorian Bennett, he can boogie. He can make big plays. There are a lot of things about this guy that I like, and I think you could probably see him go in the 3rd or 4th round. So if you're a team that needs a cornerback and misses out on one of those early ones, really deep position, there's probably 15 guys that are all long-term NFL starters at that position in this
What's
draft.
his height?
He's like 6'0". I mean, so he's.
By the way, anyone else, when you look at the helmet that Maryland wears, you feel like it's a paint fight?
Yeah, no, they're a little too busy on this uniform. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It really is. When you know what it is, but when you look at it, sometimes it looks like one of those all-star postseason college all-star games where everybody has their stickers on a helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit busy, but they've had those for Under Armour.
A long time.
Unveiled those a long time ago. But Jacorian Bennett, great combine as you said. Maryland. If you're a defensive coach, or particularly was Brian Stewart, who was at Baylor, who had went to Maryland year before last. I mean, you got a lot to play off of as far as going in recruiting, especially if you're recruiting corners. You're like, hey man, look at our dudes right here. And then flashing in Indy. But, heard his name a lot over the weekend. Maryland, not a program that gets a ton of attention, all that often. But they're deserving of it right now. And, he's a guy that got a lot of attention the last few days.
I'll never forget driving to McLean Stadium a couple of years, it would have been 3 years ago, when Maryland was playing Texas. And I wasn't paying attention. Then I looked at my updated scores, and they were beating them. They ran. I couldn't believe that.
They gave Ohio State. Took them right to the end of that game.
Yeah.
But if you want to know about Maryland's cornerbacks, just look no further than Ohio State game where they blocked an extra. The block was Deontay Banks. The return was Jacorian Bennett. That's how much athleticism they have over there. Number 4, Zach Pickens, defensive tackle from South Carolina. This is a guy who is under 300 pounds, but he's really tall, really big, and maybe not as much draft buzz from the combine as, say, a Kalijah Cansey from Pitt, who's going to be a really good player in the NFL, is hearkening comparisons to the last Pitt defensive tackle we all know,
Aaron
Donald, because of how fast he is. And there's some other guys, Apuika, Mozzie Smith from Michigan that are going to get a lot. Brian Brzee from Clemson, defensive tackles that are all going to go before Zach Pickens. But if you're the Cowboys, you need some athleticism at the defensive front, or a team like that. Zach Pickens, late second, third, maybe even late third, where he could go. This is someone you can find, I think, a ton of value for, and had a really great combine, and people are starting to notice him as well.
I'm just fascinated by the 2 seasons, Zach.
I am too.
Yeah, I know. I'm just wondering.
Names today have more consonants in them than ever before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I mean, I think it's just people trying to find different ways to spell things.
Unique,
But, I'd love to know the story behind the 2 C's in Zach. But, I mean, here's a former 5-star recruit. Recruiting matters, right? And there will inevitably be somebody who tells you, how many 3-star guys got drafted, but leave out the part of, there's also 3 times as many 3-stars every single year that are graded. So there's inevitably going to be a bunch of 3-star guys drafted because there's more of them than any other ranking that's out there. Combined probably, probably combined even. Great player. Like I said, it was a 5-star guy back in the day, and that's a fun program to keep tabs on, man. I'm interested to see where they go in this new SEC now that it's a little bit more of a crowded room. But they got a little mojo, and, obviously that East right now, Georgia's the top dog, and then, Napier's trying to find his tracks, but now here comes Tennessee again, getting back to their glory years. So it'll be interesting to see, not that they'll have divisions in the future, but interesting to see where they kind of fall in line with Shane Beamer. But I like what they've got building right now.
I like how they ended. By the way, Zach Pickens, you didn't know this. His birthday today.
Oh, well, happy birthday to Zach Pickens. Another Zach, a tight end from Old Dominion, Zach Kuntz. He 6'8", kind of an even taller version of Mike Gesicki. Didn't really show as much at Old Dominion as an inline blocker, but at 6'8" and 266 or whatever he is, somebody's going to teach him how to do that. But if you're looking, this is a deep tight end draft. He's one of those ones who might fall, somewhere in the middle of that, but he had a great week at the Combine. Will Mallory from Miami is another guy. I debated on which one of those two to put in here. I could have slashed it. Will Mallory from Miami played in a bad offense, but is super athletic. So, back in the day when Miami was just chalking up tight ends, like Jeremy Shockey and guys like that, Will Mallory would have fit those Miami tight ends. Zach Kuntz is another guy. Old Dominion, so smaller school, but on the rise, and got all the physical traits. So we'll see the transition into the NFL, but a name to keep your eye on in the middle rounds.
Yeah, they had a big splash win over Virginia Tech to start last year. It just turns out Virginia Tech was just kind of so-so, but still was a great win for that program. I love their school colors. I think they got really sharp threads. But, yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a time to be a tight end in the National Football League, that's for sure. And obviously, colleges are scouring the fields of play for the next great tight end and as many tight ends as they get their hands on. That's a position that's definitely at a premium, and the NFL is obviously thriving. That's a guy to definitely keep an eye on.
You know what?
Don't know much. I didn't see a ton of him, but I saw a little bit of Old Dominion. But
are there colors? What are the colors of Coastal Carolina?
Not even close to those.
No. Okay.
Yeah, no.
That almost looks like the old San Diego
That's
Chargers.
more North Carolina than it is anything Coastal Carolina.
Women's basketball at Old Dominion used to be a big deal.
Yeah, sure. We're not talking about that right now.
No, I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah, I know.
Nancy Lieberman.
Yeah. Every time you mention that, we lose 10 viewers. Number 2, Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas, a center. Probably can play a little guard as well. Really kind of a mauler there in the middle. And there's some good. Center is a position that's kind of random in the draft because, we had Mark Evans from Arkansas Pine Bluff on the other day. He's a guy who played tackle and guard who they're going to move to center. So that's kind of usually what happens with the center. They kind of find a guy and they move him there. Ricky Stromberg, a legit center in the kind of Travis Frederick mold of you're a center. That's what you are. There's a couple of guys like him, Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. I think he's going to be right up there with him.
51's a center or middle linebacker, right?
God, what's his name? John Michael Schmitz, I want to say. And I don't know if I'm getting that right, but from Minnesota. But there's 3 guys, and I think he's kind of raised his level from people thinking he's maybe going to be a 6th-round pick to now seeing like he might be a 3rd-round pick. He's pretty darn good, and tested out really well, which really helps.
Good for centers.
Yeah.
Good for them to get some shine.
There you go. Yeah, I wanted to throw that in there because I could have put in like 11 more tight ends and DBs. And number 1, a guy that Big 12 fans are well aware of, Bryce Ford-Wheaton from West Virginia. If you saw him play in the league this year, you saw that he was one of the very few consistent bright spots from that West Virginia offense, which would get pretty moribund at times in spite of, kind of the up and down quarterback situation. I will tell you, I think the floor for him is Cedric Wilson of that was now with the Dolphins and was with the Cowboys, because he played a lot on special teams. He can do a lot. He's fast. He's big. Really, really smart player. Seems like he'll go, and do anything the team needs. I think if you're a team that needs a wide receiver, he's like 6'3". He ran really well. He catches really well. He's really good with contested catches. I think the film shows out for him. And again, he plays special teams, so he can contribute as a non-first-round wide receiver. I think he's one of the better ones. Smoak, you and I talked about it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
we really liked.
I forgot what game it was.
That Pitt game, he was kind of he dominated against Pitt.
I'm just going to Google him. I don't know his
Y'all
height.
You're going to be shocked when you see his stats and how unimpressive they are from last year. But that speaks to West Virginia's year really overall. And I think that's something that they'll look back on when Neil Brown and be like, yeah, that was a missed opportunity. We should have performed a bit better with guys like Bryce Ford-Wheaton on our roster.
Yeah. And 4.38, 6'4", 221. For some reason, when I watched him earlier this year, and I'm not trying to compare it to his athleticism, but for a second, he reminded me of like a Des Bryant body. But obviously, I'm not trying to compare him to his skill set. But what were his stats, Craig?
He had it was like 638 yards receiving. It wasn't anything glorious, but
let's see, 100-yard game the entire year. For a receiver, you don't need to necessarily have those week in and week out, but I do think that's a little bit of a measuring stick on sort of where you can start as far as impact. His impact was wide ranging, as Paul said, but I was just more getting at there wasn't like a big game that you can really point to outside of like one, and it was one they lost in overtime, and that was his 100-yard game. I forget who that was now at this point, but yeah, he was consistent. He just didn't have like a bunch of in-your-face huge performances, but if you watch West Virginia, then it was very clear that he was one of their better players. I think that's more than fair to say.
Yeah. Right. I think and probably what's keeping him down in the middle of the draft is the fact that, the tape's not there, but I don't much blame that on Bryce Ford-Wheaton as on West Virginia. Yeah.
All right, 22 yards, 12 yards, 36 yards, 38 yards, 51 yards, 53, 51. Oh, he had a 93-yard game against Texas. on 8 catches, 23 yards, 47 yards, 11 for 152 and 2 scores and an overtime loss to KU, and then closed the year, or at the very beginning of the year, and then in week 1 prior to that had 9 for 97 and 2 yards. I want to say, did he get hurt? Was he a little bit banged up? Because he had 2 big games to start off with, and then it just kind of petered out after that. But I don't remember if he was ever dinged or not. I mean, he played the rest of the way, so it wasn't anything too serious. But, yeah, he just, outside of those first 2, didn't have like a bunch of, massive games. But then again, who did for West Virginia?
Yeah.
There was a struggle on offense all year long for them, so that's not necessarily on him, so to speak.
All right, Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie. Earlier today, Jason Fowler, student at Texas State, for being here. Thanks to Mitch Sherman coming in the studio, visiting Central Texas on the story he's writing about Texas high school football and the connection with Matt Rule out in Nebraska. Tonight, Sports Tonight, 10:30. It is on the CW. Also, tomorrow, Lee Trevino will join us, and that'll be fun because anytime we get Trevino on, it is a lot of fun. Mac Rhodes this week will be on Wednesday and not Tuesday. For everyone I've mentioned, thanks to our great sponsors, Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. Thank you every day. This is 365 Sports, and good night.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI,